Lin Feng walked through the door and saw Nan Shan outside. When he saw Lin Feng arrive, a grave and stern expression appeared on his face. He tried to smile and said, "Lin Feng, His Majesty wants to see you." Lin Feng walked through the door and saw Nan Shan outside. When he saw Lin Feng arrive, a grave and stern expression appeared on his face. He tried to smile and said, "Lin Feng, His Majesty wants to see you." "The second prince wants to see me? What's going on?" said Lin Feng a bit startled. The last time he had seen Duan Wuya was in Celestial River. On that day, Duan Wuya was wearing black and had brought 8 cultivators of the Xianqi layer with him. He had been monstrously violent. He killed the king-class evil ectoplasm and seized the heavenly dragon cauldron. But after that, the cauldron had miraculously appeared before Lin Feng. What seemed like an extremely strong sword cultivator had offered the ancient cauldron to Lin Feng. Since Duan Wuya had initially taken the cauldron from Lin Feng, he probably hadn't voluntarily given it away. It was probably because someone had forced Duan Wuya to hand it over. But what Lin Feng didn't understand was who would have taken the cauldron from Duan Wuya and given it back to him. Besides, Duan Wuya was looking for him. Was it because of the ancient cauldron? Did Duan Wuya want to know if Lin Feng had the cauldron? "Young Master Lin, I don't know about His Majesty's personal matters," said Nan Shan while shaking his head with a faint smile. Lin Feng remained silent and immediately said, "Where are we meeting?" "Lovesick Forest," replied Nan Shan. "All right, let's go," said Lin Feng indifferently while nodding. In Shuiyu, if the second prince wanted to make things difficult for Lin Feng could do nothing. Since Nan Shan had come, Lin Feng needed to go. "Thank you, young master," said Nan Shan while smiling. Immediately after, he turned around and led the way. "I'm coming too," said someone at that moment. The voice came from behind. Surprisingly, it was Lan Jiao and she was following them. "Why would you come?" asked Lin Feng while frowning. "You need to take care of me," said Lan Jiao, which made Lin Feng grow speechless. Immediately after, he started walking again and Lan Jiao followed him. The lovesick forest was calm and peaceful. Having peace of mind in that place was easy. The faint sweet fragrance of the lovesick alcohol filled the entire atmosphere, making people want to close their eyes and deeply breathe in the air. The jade-green bamboo trees were swaying in the wind. It seemed like another world. It was simple and elegant, and separated people from materialistic ambitions and made them feel at peace. "How beautiful!" Lan Jiao, who was walking on Lin Feng's side, was looking around at the beautiful landscape. She couldn't help but gasp in amazement. "Lin Feng, where are we? That alcohol smells very special." Lan Jiao was very curious. Few people had the chance to visit that place. "This is the lovesick forest. The smell is that of the lovesick alcohol. When someone drinks it, the person that they love will appear in their heart," said Lin Feng, which stupefied Lan Jiao. "Alcohol could make you feel love?" Lan Jiao sounded like she couldn't believe it. "Wait, you'll try some and see," replied Lin Feng. She really couldn't wait. A moment after, Nan Shan brought Lin Feng to a private room in the middle of the bamboo forest. At that moment, 2 people were playing chess. One of them was Duan Wuya. The other person was the amazing Duan Xinyi. When these 2 people saw Lin Feng arrive, they both stopped what they were doing and looked towards Lin Feng. "Lin Feng, you came," said Duan Wuya while smiling and slightly nodding at Lin Feng. Besides, when the beautiful Duan Xinyi saw Lin Feng, she shouted, "Lin Feng." Lan Jiao looked at Duan Xinyi, and then at Lin Feng and noticed that they were both looking at each other in different ways. Duan Xinyi was looking at Lin Feng in a soft and gentle way. Lan Jiao was a woman and she could clearly see what was going on. Besides, that woman was extremely beautiful. She looked elegant and noble. Her face also looked very delicate. In comparison with Duan Xinyi, Lan Jiao was extremely far from matching her beauty. It made Lan Jiao feel uneasy. No wonder her thousand evil illusions technique had no effect on Lin Feng. On Lin Feng's side, there was the beautiful and pure Meng Qing. Then there was that elegant and noble Duan Xinyi, no wonder. But that guy was really lucky. Meng Qing was obviously wonderful, but Duan Xinyi also seemed to have an extraordinarily high social status, and surprisingly, she also had feelings for Lin Feng. "Second prince, princess," replied Lin Feng. This was also to let Lan Jiao know their social status. Amazingly, the girl was the princess of Shuiyu. No wonder she looks so extraordinary. Lin Feng, don't call me princess. Call me Xine Yi, alright? Said the incredibly beautiful Duan Xine Yi, as if she was slightly saddened by him being formal. Lin Feng had been in her heart for a while. When she heard Lin Feng call her princess, she felt that he was putting distance between them, too much distance. She didn't like it when Lin Feng treated her the same way as everybody else. Lin Feng remained silent and immediately nodded. Xine, said Lin Feng, which made Duan Xine Yi give a satisfied smile. She then immediately walked towards him and suddenly grabbed Lin Feng's arm. She then said, Lin Feng, let's play chess. Alright. Duan Wuya was looking at them with a smile, yet not a smile on his face. He shook his head, smiled and said, when a girl is of age, she needs to hurry and get married. My sister is hopeless. When Duan Xine Yi heard Duan Wuya, her face turned red. Even though the situation was a bit embarrassing, she didn't stop holding Lin Feng's arm. Lin Feng had seen her naked. He felt like nothing was impossible anymore. After Lin Feng left her, Duan Xine Yi was constantly thinking about Lin Feng, and she couldn't get his image out of her mind. She couldn't help but think about him constantly. From that moment, she didn't think of herself as a princess when being with Lin Feng, so he had to drop the formality. She promised that if Lin Feng came back to the imperial city, she wouldn't let him leave her side again. Lin Feng was smiling wryly. He obviously understood her feelings very well. Lin Feng, play chess with my sister, said Duan Wuya while smiling. Immediately after, he looked at Nan Shan and said, let's go and take a walk by the lake. When he finished talking, he slightly smiled at Lan Jiao, but Lan Jiao glared icily at him. That face was familiar. From the second prince's status and his familiar eyes, Lan Jiao guessed that this young man was the one who was wearing black in Celestial River. He was also the one who killed all the escaping members from the Cosmic Pavilion. When Duan Wuya saw that Lan Jiao's eyes were filled with hatred, he kept smiling warmly as before and said, do you want to come for a walk? All right, said Lan Jiao coldly. She didn't want to refuse. She then left with Nan Shan and Duan Wuya. Next to the stone table in the middle of the bamboo forest, Lin Feng and Duan Xine Yi were the only ones left. They both sat down on stone chairs. Duan Xine Yi looked at Lin Feng and asked, how are you? I'm fine, nodded Lin Feng. He didn't really know how he should reply. How come you haven't come to see me in such a long time? Asked Duan Xine Yi, which made Lin Feng feel a bit surprised. He then smiled wryly and said, I was extremely busy in Yangzhou City. Is that so? And who is that beautiful woman with you exactly? You found her in such a short time, said Duan Xine Yi, sounding bitter. Meng Qing had already crushed her confidence. She was way too beautiful and pure. Duan Xine Yi was a princess in the mortal realm, but Meng Qing was a celestial goddess. And now, a new beautiful woman had appeared by Lin Feng's side. Even though she wasn't as beautiful as Meng Qing, she was also extremely beautiful. She had a particularly alluring body and looked extremely seductive. She probably attracted lots of men. Her name is Lan Jiao. We accidentally crossed paths, replied Lin Feng while smiling wryly. Oh, replied Duan Xine Yi in a soft and gentle voice while lowering her head. Then she silently looked at the chessboard and said, Lin Feng, come, let's play chess. I am extremely bad at chess. Xine Yi, you will have to show mercy, said Lin Feng with a faint smile on his face. Chess in his previous life and in the world of cultivation was quite different. Lin Feng knew almost nothing about the game in the cultivation world. Don't worry. I will definitely show mercy, said Duan Xine Yi while giving a mischievous smile. Xine Yi, let's go outside, have a walk, said Lin Feng when he saw the chaos that happened to the chessboard. Xine Yi, let's go outside, have a walk, said Lin Feng when he saw the chaos that happened to the chessboard. Duan Wuya had invited him to come, but it seemed like it was only because of Duan Xine Yi. It didn't seem to have anything to do with the ancient cauldron, but Lan Jiao and Duan Wuya were together. Lin Feng was afraid that Lan Jiao would lose her temper. After all, in Celestial River, Duan Wuya had killed Aunt Yun, who was very close to Lan Jiao. All right, nodded Duan Xine Yi. Immediately after, she stood up and joined Lin Feng on a walk through the bamboo forest. Deep in the forest, there was a brook which was softly emitting the sound of running water. There was also a small bridge which crossed it. The scenery was enchanting. Duan Xinyi raised her head and looked at a bird that was resting on the emerald green bamboo. She suddenly looked pensive and said in a soft voice, "I wish I could one day have a house here with the one I love. It would be so wonderful." Lin Feng was surprised and immediately smiled wryly. The situation was awkward for Lin Feng. He then said, "The one who created the lovesick forest probably had the same thought, which is why they created such a beautiful place." Yes, she was very stupid. She stopped all contact with her clan because of the lover she chose, nodded Duan Xinyi. When Lin Feng heard Duan Xinyi heard Lin Feng, he became very curious. He couldn't help but ask, "Who's the owner of the lovesick forest?" Duan Xinyi looked at Lin Feng, smiled and said, "The person who used to be called the most beautiful woman in the entire country, Yu Menghe." "The most beautiful woman of Shuiyu?" Lin Feng was surprised. Duan Xinyi was extremely beautiful and had an extremely high social status, but she had never gained the title of most beautiful woman in the country. However, that Yu Menghe had been considered as such, Lin Feng was curious to see such a beauty. "Yu Menghe," whispered Lin Feng, and immediately after, he looked at Duan Xinyi and said, "Her family name is Yu." Duan Xinyi slightly nodded and said, "You immediately guessed it. Indeed, she belongs to the Yu clan. Besides, in the past, she was considered to be the most gifted disciple of the Yu clan, to the extent that was even considered as the strongest woman in the entire country of Shuiyu. Even amongst men, rare were those who could compete with her." Lin Feng was becoming more and more curious. Lin Feng was really wondering what such a woman could be like. Amazingly, she was the most beautiful woman and the strongest woman of the country, and on top of that, there were extremely few men who could defeat her. But it's weird though. Since she has such high natural abilities, why did the Yu clan reject her? They should have put her at the core of the clan. Why did they stop contact? Asked Lin Feng, who didn't understand. The Yu clan wanted to compete with the Imperial clan, and the Yu clan, having an extremely gifted disciple, would have only been an advantage. Why would they stop talking to her? That happened 18 years ago. At that time, the situation was still the same as now. The Duan clan, the Yu clan and the Yu clan were all extremely strong, but my Duan clan and the Yu clan were slightly stronger than the Yu clan because of our special spirits. As far as strength was concerned, no matter if we're talking about today or before, the Yu clan cannot rival the Duan clan or the Yu clan. They were and are much weaker. In terms of wealth, the Yu clan isn't as wealthy as the Duan clan and the Yu clan. Amongst the three biggest clans, the strongest and the wealthiest is the Duan clan, which is how the power balance was created. Besides, the Yu clan is second strongest clan in the country. Duan Xinyi was speaking slowly and continued. In Shuiyu, 4 prodigious junior cultivators appeared. One of them belonged to the Duan clan and one to the Yu clan, who have the extremely strong blood spirits. Then there was one who came from a clan of sword cultivators, the Zhuge clan. They transfer their sword skills from generation to generation. So the third prodigy was from that clan and is called Zhuge Wuqing. Then, the fourth person didn't belong to an influential clan. Instead, that person was absolutely unknown in the past. Nobody knows exactly where he came from. Actually, I only know that just like you, his family name was Lin. He suddenly rose as a prodigy in the imperial city and possessed a dual spirit. The 4 prodigies of 18 years ago had a much more terrifying power and strength than the 8 high officials of today, and were extremely famous. Amongst these 4 people, there were 3 young men and a young girl. That young girl was precisely the most beautiful woman in Shuiyu, Yu Menghe. Lin Feng imagined being considered as the most beautiful woman of the entire country, and as the strongest and most gifted woman as well. She was the best disciple of the Yu clan. She was a genius. That woman made the 3 men's hearts shake. It seemed like Lin Feng understood what had happened. The 3 incredibly strong prodigies fell in love with that woman. Whispered Duan Xinyi as if she was imagining the story. Every time she heard the story, she was very moved. She couldn't help but sigh. There was more to know about the story of that heroic woman though. But Yu Menghe didn't choose the strongest of them, the one from the imperial clan. She didn't choose Wu Qing the swordmaster either. Instead, she fell in love with the unknown young man. You can imagine how the Yu clan reacted when they found out that Yu Menghe and that unknown prodigy were together. She had a lot of pressure from her clan. Lin Feng lightly nodded. She had chosen neither the strongest cultivator nor the monstrous sword cultivator Zhuge Wuqing. Instead, She had fallen in love with a prodigious young man who had no social background. That was a calamity for her clan, as one could well imagine. Besides, in the beginning the Imperial clan and the Yu clan had an agreement. They wanted one of their boys and one of their girls to marry. The prodigy of the Duan clan had a marriage agreement with Yu Menghe. Besides, the prodigy of the Duan clan was an extremely aggressive and arrogant person, said Duan Xian Yi while shaking her head, which startled Lin Feng. However, he was slowly understanding why Yu Menghe and her clan had stopped talking. After that, there was a huge pressure on her shoulders. The couple decided to elope and leave the country. Zhuge Wuqing's heart was broken into 1,000 pieces. He just kept practicing sword cultivation. Besides, he didn't put Yu Menghe and her lover in a difficult situation, even though his passion for her reached the heavens. But Yu Menghe and the prodigious young man didn't manage to hide. The people of the Imperial clan and of the Yu clan found them. Besides, at that time Yu Menghe was wakened for some reason. When the prodigious young man saw that they would never succeed in escaping, he decided to send Yu Menghe back to the Yu clan and fought against the prodigy of the Duan clan in a decisive battle. In the end, the cultivator from my clan won the battle. He sealed the young prodigy's spirit and expelled him from the imperial city. Of course, I've heard this story many times. My mother used to tell me these stories. I was born shortly after that battle. Besides, my parents don't allow me to tell anyone else about that story. You have to keep it a secret, Lin Feng. It's a secret between us, said Duan Xian Yi. At that moment, Lin Feng looked disappointed. Duan Xian Yi and he hadn't witnessed the events 18 years before, but they were still profoundly moved by that story. They had no choice but to rely on their imagination to have an idea of what it must have been like. They had fought because of a beautiful woman. In the end, the unknown young man had left with his soul sealed. Maybe deep in his heart, he had never given up on getting her back. But even if he didn't want to give up, what could he do? He had been able to leave alive. That was already amazing. Lin Feng looked a bit disappointed and looked at Duan Xian Yi. A secret between them? Lin Feng looked a bit disappointed and looked at Duan Xian Yi. A secret between them? Could it be that what happened 18 years ago was still a secret? But Lin Feng nodded in agreement and Duan Xian Yi smiled. After Yu Menghe's love left the imperial city, she stopped all contact with her clan, purified her heart and adopted a minimalist lifestyle. She created the lovesick forest and the lovesick alcohol, which gives birth to feelings of love in people's hearts. At that moment, Duan Xian Yi and Lin Feng had already left the bamboo forest. She then continued. Besides, the one from the Duan clan gave up and started devoting his life to cultivation. He even gave up his status as the monarch. It is said that these days his cultivation level is monstrous and incredible. Very few people know how strong he really is. At that moment, Duan Xian Yi paused, blinked and continued. Maybe Yu Menghe knows about it, but since the event that happened 18 years ago, she rarely shows herself. Zhuge Wuqing and the unknown genius are also like this as well. Lin Feng nodded. 18 years was a long time. Maybe they had already left Shuiyu and would never come back. Without even realizing it, the two of them arrived at the lakeside not far from the pavilion. When Duan Wuya saw them, he slightly smiled and said, Xian Lin Feng, how come you have already finished playing? Duan Xian Yi's face was red and she slightly lowered her head. Lan Jiao looked at Lin Feng at that moment and asked, when are we going back? Lin Feng and I rarely have the opportunity to meet. Why hurry and leave? Lin Feng, let's go and have a drink, said Duan Wuya while smiling, but at that moment, Lin Feng was watching something behind Duan Wuya. When Duan Wuya saw that, a profound and meaningful smile appeared on his face. Immediately after, he slowly moved and let Lin Feng look at what was behind him. At that moment, in the pavilion on the lake, there were many people. They were all young people and had magnificent clothes. Each and every single one of them looked extraordinary. These people were all noble cultivators and all had extraordinary social statuses. Besides, Lin Feng noticed one person in particular. At the same time, that young man also noticed Lin Feng. They both stared at each other. That young man had a deep and profound expression in his eyes. Surprisingly, he looked scared and was fixedly staring at Lin Feng. That young man was Yu Tianxing. Besides, by Yu Tianxing's side, there was also Yu Tianchun. Those two were really extremely close friends, it seemed. The funniest part is that even though they acted together, Lin Feng always came out on top. All these chatting young men suddenly stopped talking as if they had sensed that something strange was going on. Lin Feng was gradually releasing a deadly qi which invaded the atmosphere. His eyes were filled with killing intent. When Lin Feng saw Yu Tianxing's facial expression, he immediately understood that the assassins who had tried to kill him before had been sent by Yu Tianxing and Yu Tianqian. Otherwise, they wouldn't look so scared when seeing Lin Feng. As expected, Yu Tianxing was trying to take his revenge. The air was filled with an oppressive deadly energy. Lin Feng's killing intent was becoming clearer and clearer. Lin Feng, what are you doing? Said Yu Tianxing, sounding cold and detached. However, his face still showed that he was scared. What are you doing? Lin Feng said nothing and walked towards the pavilion. While walking on the long bridge, Lin Feng's energy was becoming denser and more powerful. Yu Tianxing firmly gnashed his teeth and kept fixedly staring at Lin Feng. What monstrous deadly energy! Under the power of the deadly energy, Yu Tianxing started shaking from head to toe. He was drenched in cold sweat. At that moment, Lin Feng looked extremely murderous, as if he was going to start killing at any moment. Lin Feng, my family name is Yu. Remember that I am from the Yu clan? Said Yu Tianxing when he saw that Lin Feng was not responding. When the crowd heard Yu Tianxing, they were all stupefied. It seemed like Yu Tianxing was extremely scared of Lin Feng. Otherwise, he would have never said something like that. I know. Lin Feng finally replied, but his deadly energy didn't disappear. Yu Tianxing was fixed staring at Lin Feng and said, since you understand, you probably know that if anything happens to me, the Yu clan will be furious. Besides, we are not just any clan. I hope that you deeply consider these things. Yu Tianxing was explaining everything to Lin Feng, almost as if he feared that Lin Feng didn't know his status and how strong the Yu clan was. Yu Tianxing was scared of Lin Feng, extremely scared. He deeply and bitterly hated Lin Feng since the first time he was attacked by him. Because of hatred, he had been constantly sending people to kill Lin Feng. And he was scared because Lin Feng was extremely carefree. Lin Feng could be considered a madman. He didn't care about any consequences. He had even dared kill Duan Han and cause trouble at Wen Ren Yan and Duan Yu's wedding ceremony, where he dared to kill Wen Ren Yan and Duan Lai. Therefore, Yu Tianxing was afraid of Lin Feng. If Lin Feng was furious, he would kill him on the spot. I know, said Lin Feng as coldly as before, looking completely unmoved. Since you know, move away, said Yu Tianxing, who wanted to leave but didn't dare because Lin Feng was crossing the bridge. He didn't want to go anywhere near Lin Feng. If Lin Feng really wanted to kill him, he wouldn't be able to leave. He was currently a lamb in a tiger's den. Move away. Lin Feng smiled coldly. His deadly energy was not growing weaker, on the contrary, it was becoming much more violent. The deadly energy, which was becoming more and more powerful, made Yu Tianxing's body become rigid. He felt like he was freezing. Since you know that my family name is Yu, and you know that the Yu clan has a lot of influence and power, and since you perfectly understand that if you touch me, the repercussions will be grave, how come you are not moving away? Yu Tianxing sounded like he was threatening Lin Feng. At that moment, the situation was not safe, and he was feeling an impending danger. Because he felt such danger, he was threatening Lin Feng and hoping that Lin Feng would open a path of escape. But Lin Feng was as unmoved as before. He remained absolutely motionless, as if nothing would make him leave. Deadly energy was violently fluctuating in the air. At that moment, behind Yu Tianxing, the others were glancing at each other. Just as the rumors said, Lin Feng was insane. Yu Tianqian was also staring at Lin Feng and frowning, especially when he noticed that Lin Feng and Duan Xinyi had come together. His heart felt painful. Because of the marriage agreement between the Duan clan and the Yu clan, he had always hoped to become Duan Xinyi's husband, but Duan Xinyi wasn't interested in him at all. However, Lin Feng seemed to be very intimate with her. Yu Tianqian was angry. He also wanted Lin Feng to die, but Lin Feng was constantly becoming stronger and stronger. Even cultivators at the Xianqi lair couldn't kill him. What made him extremely scared was that he didn't ever know what Lin Feng was thinking. He didn't know when Lin Feng would attack him. Lin Feng didn't reply to Yu Tianxing and remained silent. He was just standing on the bridge without moving, and still releasing his deadly energy, which was filling the atmosphere. Nobody knew what he was thinking. Yu Tianxing and the others also remained silent. In such an open space, the silence was terrifying. Duan Wuya looked indifferent and expressionless. He was calmly watching the scene. It seemed like these things had nothing to do with him. Besides, Lan Jiao looked at Duan Wuya and understood what he was thinking deep in his heart, even though he was expressionless. At that moment, she had already understood that Lin Feng and Yu Tianxing were enemies. Besides, a short time before, Duan Wuya had been spending some time with Yu Tianxing and the others. It seemed like they were also friends. But Lin Feng had been invited by Duan Wuya, and from what was happening at that moment, he also knew that Lin Feng and Yu Tianxing were enemies, but he had arranged for them meet on purpose. He clearly had something in mind. Of course, Lan Jiao was convinced that Lin Feng knew this as well. She wasn't going to get involved in Lin Feng's business, though she couldn't anyway. The oppressive energy floated in the silent atmosphere for a while, and finally, Lin Feng's mouth moved and he said, "Are you a member of the Yu clan?" Yu Tianxing was surprised. He hadn't thought that Lin Feng would in such a stupid thing, but he still nodded and said, "Indeed, I am a member of the Yu clan and their blood runs through my veins." "Your clan, the Yu clan, is very powerful and influential, right?" replied Lin Feng again. "Indeed," nodded Yu Tianxing. Lin Feng's eyes were filled with killing intent as he continued. "The blood of the Yu clan is flowing in your veins and the Yu clan is extremely strong. And you, Yu Tianxing, want to kill me. So shouldn't I kill you before you actually manage to kill me? If you kill me, the Yu clan will never let you off." When Yu Tianxing heard Lin Feng, he started shaking. "When I wasn't planning to kill you, did you let me off?" asked Lin Feng in a cold tone. "Since you originally wanted to kill me, since you never let me off, why wouldn't I kill you if I have the opportunity? Do you think that I can only wait for you to kill me without fighting back?" The crowd was astonished. Indeed, regardless of whether Lin Feng killed him or not, Yu Tianxing and the Yu clan didn't intend to let him off. Why should Lin Feng let Yu Tianxing off then? No matter what, in such circumstances there was only one possible decision: to kill. Yu Tianxing narrowed his eyes and looked like a venomous snake. "What you mean is that you want to kill me?" Yu Tianxing narrowed his eyes and looked like a venomous snake. "What you mean is that you want to kill me? Indeed, you have no way out. I will kill you today or I am no better than a coward," said Lin Feng, sounding cold and detached. "Well, why are you not attacking me then?" asked Yu Tianxing. Lin Feng had been standing there for a while already, but he had only been releasing deadly energy, and had remained at the end of the bridge, motionless. "Because I wanted to give you an opportunity," said Lin Feng, sounding cold and detached. "I gave you a chance to talk, but unfortunately, all you've been doing is threatening me and emphasizing the strength of your clan. Since it's that way, what else needs to be said?" When Lin Feng finished talking, he started to slowly walk towards Yu Tianxing. Lin Feng had given a chance to Yu Tianxing. A moment before, during that short time, he had been waiting for Yu Tianxing to apologize and make amends. The Yu clan was extremely strong. Lin Feng couldn't fight against them, therefore he needed more time. He didn't want to provoke the Yu clan this early. It wouldn't be beneficial to him. Unfortunately, Yu Tianxing hadn't even thought about apologizing. He had only been threatening Lin Feng and speaking of how strong the Yu clan was, but that just infuriated Lin Feng. Even if the Yu clan was extremely strong, did it mean that Lin Feng would just sit and let Yu Tianxing kill him? Could Lin Feng ever wait for the Yu clan to kill him without fighting back? When Yu Tianxing heard Lin Feng, he started shaking. Lin Feng had already given him a chance. A moment before, regardless of whether Lin Feng wanted to kill Yu Tianxing or not, the Yu clan wouldn't let Lin Feng off anyway. Therefore, since Yu Tianxing wasn't apologizing nor making peace, Lin Feng had no other choice. A moment before, Yu Tianxing did have the idea of apologizing and begging for a pardon, but only a fleeting thought. He wasn't able to sacrifice his face, which is why he resorted to threatening Lin Feng and saying how strong the Yu clan was. Even though he was scared of Lin Feng in his subconscious, he was still convinced that Lin Feng would never dare to kill him because he was a member of the Yu clan and as such he has to protect the dignity of the clan. But at that moment he could sense that Lin Feng's deadly energy become more violent. His confidence was starting to break. Lin Feng was someone who would dare to kill him. He looked at Lin Feng, who was slowly moving towards him. Each of Lin Feng's steps seemed like he was stepping on Yu Tianxing's heart. crushing his beliefs. Lin Feng. Yu Tianxing finally opened his mouth while looking at Lin Feng, who was walking towards him, and said, Lin Feng, if you don't kill me, I can guarantee that from today on, you will never have a problem with the Yu clan ever again. Lin Feng stopped walking, looked at Yu Tianxing and smiled coldly. You are too arrogant. Today I'm the one giving chances, not the other way around. I gave you an opportunity but you let it slip, therefore it's too late already. Lin Feng then continued walking towards Yu Tianxing, which made his heart twitch painfully. Lin Feng had given him a chance but he had chosen the wrong path, therefore, there was no more possible compromises. Lin Feng, you will never be able to resist the Yu clan's fury, said Yu Tianxing, whose was twisting even more violently, as he gnashing his teeth. Lin Feng just ignored him because it was unnecessary to waste any more words on him. Yu Tianxing had become Lin Feng's prey. When Yu Tianxing saw Lin Feng approaching, his heart started pounding violently. A deadly energy completely surrounded him. Lin Feng really wanted to kill Yu Tianxing. The others were also dumbstruck. Lin Feng would dare infuriate the Yu clan and kill Yu Tianxing? Yu Tianxing slightly backed away. This time he wouldn't stand by Yu Tianxing's side. He was abandoning Yu Tianxing, who would have to face Lin Feng's wrath by himself. Yu Tianxing's eyes sparkled and he smiled coldly. Yu Tianxing and Yu Tianxing weren't friends at all. If they were sticking together, it was because they had a common enemy, Lin Feng. They both hated Lin Feng and both hoped for his death. But at that moment, Lin Feng wanted to kill Yu Tianxing. However, Yu Tianxing didn't only not try and stop him, but he was also laughing to himself. If Lin Feng killed Yu Tianxing, the Yu clan would be enraged. Lin Feng wouldn't be able to resist the Yu clan if Yu Tianxing died. Nobody would be able to save Lin Feng, not even the second prince. The Yu clan would never allow one of their members to be killed without doing anything. Therefore, if Lin Feng killed Yu Tianxing, he was courting death. Yu Tianxing was of course delighted about that. When Yu Tianxing realized that Yu Tianxing was moving away from him, his heart was invaded by coldness. That bastard, he was abandoning him to be killed by Lin Feng. At that moment Yu Tianxing was deeply saddened to end up alone. Lin Feng wanted to kill him and nobody was helping him. These days who had the power to stop Lin Feng? Besides, Yu Tianxing was fully aware that this exact situation might happen, but he surprisingly thought that the power and influence of the Yu clan would be enough to make Lin Feng cower. Lin Feng, if you still don't trust my word, I can swear to you that if you let me off, my clan will never raise a hand to you again, said Yu Tianxing, growing extremely nervous. He felt completely powerless at that moment. Lin Feng was only 10 steps from him. He finally realized that he might die today. The smell of death was extremely thick. Yu Tianxing knew that he might die at any more moment. Lin Feng ignored him as before. The only sound in the atmosphere was that of Lin Feng's steps, which were resonating deep in Yu Tianxing's heart. At the moment when he was about to die, would Lin Feng really believe a single word he said about compromise? He had made too many mistakes and never attempted to make peace. Lin Feng wouldn't give any more chances. Lin Feng finally stopped walking. He was only 7 steps away from Yu Tianxing. It seemed like everything had happened so fast and he had appeared there in a flash. At the same time, a dazzling light which looked like sunlight appeared around Lin Feng's body, and it was filled with monstrous killing intent and deadly qi. Clop! Clop! Oh! Yu Tianxing was slowly walking backwards. When he sensed Lin Feng's qi, his heart felt like it was frozen. Lin Feng's qi had the power of the Xian qi layer. Lin Feng had already broken free from the chains of the Ling qi layer, and had reached the Xian qi layer. At that moment Lin Feng was terrifying. No wonder all those people never came back. Yu Tianxing's heart was brutally and violently pounding. His heart was filled with hatred. Yu Tianxing had only been able to send cultivators of the first Xian qi layer to kill Lin Feng. As the 5th young master of the Yu clan, he had no authority over cultivators above the first Xian qi layer. Therefore, he had never been able to successfully kill Lin Feng. He had stupidly put himself in that situation. A sword made of pure qi appeared in Lin Feng's hand. Yu Tianxing hastily yelled, "You can't kill me. The Yu clan will never let you off. You are arrogant and stupid," said Lin Feng while shaking his head. While slowly raising his sword made from pure qi, he said, "Even if I don't kill you, The Yu clan will never let me off. Since the Yu clan will always be my enemy and considering the events today, how could I possibly let you live? At that moment, everybody was looking at Lin Feng's sword made from pure qi. If that sword moved, Yu Tianxing would die. The crowd felt that they were suffocating under the powerful qi which had invaded the entire atmosphere. They were all only focusing on the sword in Lin Feng's hand which started to descend. "Stop!" shouted an extremely aggressive voice. Deadly energy spread through the air. That aggressive voice made the atmosphere vibrate and it contained a faint qi which pierced through Lin Feng's ear, leaving him slightly dumbstruck for a second. His sword stopped in the air, right above Yu Tianxing's head, and didn't descend any further. "Yu Qiu," said Lin Feng coldly while turning his head. That furious voice contained a faint trace of qi. It was similar to the attack that interrupted his battle with Heimo at the Celestial Academy. That voice belonged to Yu Qiu, the third elder of the Yu clan. When Lin Feng and Heimo fought each other, Yu Qiu's voice injured and stunned Lin Feng. As expected, when Yu Tianxing saw Yu Qiu at Lin Feng's back, his eyes suddenly revealed delight. He said, roared, "Third uncle, save me." The one who had shouted was indeed Yu Qiu. He was walking over the bridge and there was two people with him on his left and right. They were all releasing monstrously strong qi. All those three cultivators were at the Xian Qi layer and all belonged to the Yu clan. This time Lin Feng had run out of luck. Maybe it would actually be Lin Feng who died today. Many people were thinking that Lin Feng had already infuriated the Yu clan. "Stop," said Lin Feng while the crowd was thinking. Lin Feng's voice was cold, ice cold. Besides, at the same time, Lin Feng's hand continued to move and his sword slightly moved down which made Yu Tianxing give a horrible shriek as he closed his eyes. Yu Qiu and the two others were so shocked that they stopped in their tracks. That guy. Everybody was looking at Lin Feng whose sword made from pure qi was only an inch away from Yu Tianxing. Lin Feng was incredibly aggressive and unrestrained. At the moment when Yu Qiu and two other cultivators at the Xian Qi layer arrived and walked towards him, Lin Feng still looked completely unaffected and on top of that, his sword was still moving in for the kill. How audacious. That guy. Everybody was looking at Lin Feng whose sword made from pure qi was only an inch away from Yu Tianxing. Lin Feng was incredibly aggressive and unrestrained. At the moment when Yu Qiu and two other cultivators at the Xian Qi layer arrived and walked towards him, Lin Feng still looked completely unaffected and on top of that, his sword was still moving in for the kill. How audacious. I, Yu Qiu, haven't seen anyone dare to attack one of the grandchildren of the Yu clan, especially in front of me, said Yu Qiu sounding extremely evil while staring at Lin Feng's back, like a venomous snake. But Lin Feng as before seemed indifferent. Yu Qiu facing his back but Lin Feng didn't turn around at all. "Now you have seen," said Lin Feng coldly and detached. "Yes, I have. You are extremely courageous and gifted. You surprised all of us, but today your life will end here," said Yu Qiu in an ice-cold tone. He released a piercing deadly energy which moved towards Lin Feng. "Yu Tianxing's life is still in my hands. You dare say that will take my life, Yu Qiu? Are you not afraid that I will kill him?" replied Lin Feng. He just had to slightly move his sword made from pure qi more, and Yu Tianxing would be killed in an instant. If Yu Qiu attacked, Lin Feng would still have time to kill Yu Tianxing, but even in such circumstances, Yu Qiu still dared to act arrogantly and threaten Lin Feng. "I'm not afraid. If you kill him, your family and friends will all die with you. They will be uprooted until there isn't even a single descendant left," threatened Yu Qiu again, sounding extremely cold which made Lin Feng stupefied. If he killed Yu Tianxing, Yu Qiu would kill his friends and family, not even a single one would remain. "What you mean is that if I don't kill Yu Tianxing, you will only kill me, but if I kill Yu Tianxing, even my friends and family will die?" Lin Feng's heart was filled with endless coldness but his voice sounded as calm and serene. Yu Tianxing was the only one who could see how calm and carefree Lin Feng's eyes looked. Yu Tianxing's heart was pounding. Lin Feng was way too dangerous. He could end his life at any moment. "Indeed," nodded Yu Qiu. "Therefore today no matter what happens I will die," said Lin Feng. "You are not as stupid as you seem," joked Yu Qiu. On that day, no matter what, he wouldn't let Lin Feng live. He would never be allowed to leave there alive. In other words, today no matter what, whether I kill Yu Tianxing or not, I am doomed either way, right? Yu Qiu was smiling because of the joke he had just made, but when he heard Lin Feng's response, his facial expression drastically changed. Yu Tianxing looked terrified. Could it be that you want your friends and family to die with you? Threatened Yu Qiu, sounding ice cold. Family? Lin Feng smiled. He had already left his clan and didn't care about them at all. Then he didn't know where his father Lin Hai was. There was only one person for whom Lin Feng was scared, Meng Qing. Concerning his friends, Lin Feng suddenly talked. Second Prince, all my friends are students of the Celestial Academy. If anyone dares to attack your friends at the Celestial Academy, I will have no other choice but to personally kill them, replied Duan Wuya to Lin Feng's statement, as if he had immediately guessed what Lin Feng meant. When Yu Qiu and the others heard Duan Wuya, they were dumbstruck. Duan Wuya was surprisingly helping Lin Feng, and would dare to threaten the Yu clan. Thank you, Your Highness, smiled Lin Feng. Just as Lan Jiao had guessed, Lin Feng had understood why Duan Wuya had created such a situation. Duan Wuya wanted to kill Yu Tianxing. Even though Lin Feng didn't know why Duan Wuya was like this, he could understand Duan Wuya's plot. Since Duan Wuya had organized everything, Lin Feng had the guarantee that Duan Wuya would definitely protect his friends. Even if he killed Yu Tianxing, it wouldn't be that easy to kill Lin Feng. Everybody heard it. If I kill Yu Tianxing, I will die. If I don't kill Yu Tianxing, I will die as well. Since I will die either way, I of course have to kill Yu Tianxing. Besides, I will not be the only murderer. Yu Qiu should be considered as my accomplice, said Lin Feng, sounding particularly evil. His words made the people's hearts vibrate. Lin Feng wanted to kill Yu Tianxing, uncle, shouted Yu Tianxing. Yu Qiu had put him in a dangerous situation. He knew now that threatening Lin Feng never worked. Would you dare? Deadly energies emerged from Yu Qiu's body and pierced towards Lin Feng. Why not? Lin Feng smiled in an extremely evil way. Yu Tianxing, whether I kill you or not, your third uncle will kill me. Therefore, it's clear that your third uncle wants you to die. He doesn't care whether I, Lin Feng, kill you or not, right? When he finished talking, his sword made of pure qi slowly started move. Don't. When Yu Tianxing saw that, he begged Lin Feng in a weak voice. He didn't even have the strength to shout. However, while that weak voice spread through the atmosphere, the light of Lin Feng's sword slowly vanished. Just like Yu Tianxing's life, Lin Feng had killed him. Lin Feng had finally killed Yu Tianxing, without showing any mercy. The crowd was astonished. They were calmly looking at the corpse as it slowly fell. Yu Tianxing had died. A young master of the Yu clan had been killed by Lin Feng in front of everybody. Yu Tianxing was supposed to have a brilliant future before him with infinite possibilities, but before he could emerge into greatness, he created enmity with Lin Feng. He had been extremely unlucky. The most unfortunate was that he wanted to kill Lin Feng, but had failed a few times. In the end, he had lost his life because of it. Yu Qiu also watched the scene unfold. His heart was violently pounding. Lin Feng had killed Yu Tianxing. He had thought that Lin Feng wouldn't dare, but in fact Lin Feng had just proved that he was much more audacious than expected. Or maybe more precisely, Yu Qiu wasn't as imposing and domineering as he thought himself to be. How foolish had he been to say that Lin Feng would die no matter what. He had been foolish to say such arrogant and presumptuous words. No matter what, Lin Feng was going to die. Why didn't he try and prevent him from killing Yu Tianxing? Yu Qiu had let Yu Tianxing die. Lin Feng had brought Yu Tianxing to a cliff edge and Yu Qiu gave the final push. Yu Qiu's heart was pounding violently. Inevitably, what happened on this day would quickly be known to everyone, to the extent that people would also know that Yu Qiu's foolish words had led to Yu Tianxing's death. Yu Tianxing was the patriarch's son, his brother's son. An incredible deadly energy spread through the atmosphere and moved towards Lin Feng. Yu Qiu had to tear Lin Feng's body into 1,000 pieces. If he didn't, how would he explain all this to his big brother? At the same time, Lin Feng turned around and Yu Qiu finally saw Lin Feng's face. At that moment, Lin Feng's eyes were filled with an endless coldness. Yu Qiu had threatened to kill him, his family and friends. They were both staring at each other, with killing intent filling their eyes. They both wanted to rip each other apart. Everybody else move away, said Yu Qiu, sounding colder than ever before. Even if all these cultivators were noble and wealthy at that moment, Wuxia only wanted to kill Lin Feng. None of these young people refused. Their silhouettes started flickering and they all left the pavilion. They had nothing to do with that, so they didn't want to get injured from their battle. Yu Tianchun was still smiling. In a flash, he landed far away on the field. Lin Feng was going to die. Yu Tianxing had died, so Lin Feng would definitely die here. In a flash, only one person was left in the pavilion: Lin Feng. Cut off his hands and feet, don't kill him too quickly, said Wuxia while glaring at Lin Feng. His voice was ice cold. When he finished talking, the two cultivators of the Xianqi lair by his side immediately started moving. They both ran across the bridge towards Lin Feng. When Lin Feng saw these two people coming towards him, an incredible quantity of pure qi started to burn and flash around his body. That pure qi looked like both light qi and fire qi at the same time. It was dazzling and incredible. Because Lin Feng had been practicing the Cosmos Burning Sun skill, after breaking through to the Xianqi lair, Lin Feng's pure qi had turned into Sunfire pure qi. It contained fire qi which came directly from the blazing sun. The most terrifying part didn't only lie in the destructive power of the qi, but also in the fact that it could set people ablaze in an instant. When the two cultivators of the Xianqi lair sensed Lin Feng's terrifying pure qi, the eyes of these two cultivators of the Xianqi lair flashed. Lin Feng's skill was extraordinary. He was only at the first Xianqi lair, but his pure qi was monstrous to the extent that it scared them. Die! Shouted the two people as they unleashed a perfectly synchronized attack. Extremely loud sounds emerged above the bridge. Cracking sounds uninterruptedly spread through the air. Besides, the pavilion in which Lin Feng was slowly being destroyed as if it could collapse on him at any moment. At the same time, the two cultivators of the Xianqi lair had thrown themselves at Lin Feng. Lin Feng smiled. They wanted to force him into a critical situation? Lin Feng started walking and heavily stamped onto the ground. In a flash, the bridge was smashed into pieces which made the opponents lose their footing for a second, however. Immediately after, they continued towards Lin Feng. Nonetheless, Lin Feng used the counterforce created from when he stamped onto the ground and jumped into the air, after which heavy rumbling noises spread through the atmosphere while the pavilion started to break apart. Lin Feng had the seal of the sun on his body. Then, an incredibly scorching hot sword energy started to fill the atmosphere. The people raised their heads and looked at Lin Feng in the air. The light around his body was so dazzling that they were unable to see him clearly. The people raised their heads and looked at Lin Feng in the air. The light around his body was so dazzling that they were unable to see him clearly. How terrifying! Thought the people in the crowd while their hearts were pounding. Lin Feng's sword was as bright as the sun. It was dazzling and felt like it could ignite the atmosphere. Besides, the two cultivators of the Xianqi lair who were moving towards Lin Feng raised their heads and saw that Lin Feng was already high above them. Their hearts started to shake. That light made them unable to keep their eyes open. It was too bright. Scorching sword, said Lin Feng. Immediately after, Lin Feng's sword contained the scorching brightness of the sun, which amazed the crowd. It was scorching hot, dazzling and violent. Nobody could look at that sword. In the past, Lin Feng had been observing the sun and created 3 sword skills. The sword of the rising sun, which contained the power of the sunrise. Then there was his scorching sword which had the brilliance of the scorching midday sun, and finally, there was his sword of the setting sun which had the pallid brilliance of a sunset. Besides, these days Lin Feng had learnt the Cosmos Burning Sun skill which helped him manifest the power of the sun to a much higher degree. At that moment his sword was so dazzling because of his Cosmos Burning Sun skill and his scorching sword skill. He had also released his sword energy. The result was an incredibly dazzling sword. Scorching sword, people's hearts were pounding. Immediately after they closed their eyes, Lin Feng's sword was too dazzling. They were unable to look directly at the sword. In their minds, Lin Feng's words were resonating. Lin Feng was monstrously terrifying. They didn't dare look directly at him or his sword. The two cultivators of the Xianqi lair, who were rushing towards Lin Feng, started shaking violently. They slightly narrowed their eyes, but they still couldn't look directly at Lin Feng's sword. However, they could distinctly sense that Lin Feng's scorching sword was descending towards them. An incredible sense of danger spread through their hearts. They both stopped moving towards Lin Feng, and an incredible pure qi was unleashed to block the sword. However, that pure qi was immediately destroyed when it collided with Lin Feng's scorching sword, only emitting small cracking noises as it destroyed the pure qi. In the air, Lin Feng's scorching sword's glow had enveloped the two cultivators of the Xian Qi layer and Lin Feng. The crowd was already unable to see the three silhouettes clearly anymore. There was only a radiant glow which looked incredibly beautiful. At that moment, a deathly silence filled the atmosphere. The brilliance of the sun which was surrounding Lin Feng's sword vanished, and what was hidden by the glow became visible again to the crowd. However, there was only one person left, Lin Feng. The two other cultivators of the Xian Qi layer were nowhere to be seen. Apart from Lin Feng, there was nobody else in sight. Some flames were still burning in the air, and the dazzling brilliance of the sun was emanating from the flames. They died. The crowd was astonished. After Lin Feng's scorching sword skill had vanished, all traces of the two cultivators of the Xian Qi layer had vanished with it. They had been surrounded by that blinding sword light and simply vanished without trace. The two cultivators of the Xian Qi layer had been killed by Lin Feng. Lin Feng's strength is really monstrous. The crowd was astonished. Lin Feng was terrifying. Those people were members of the Yu clan and had both broken through to the Xian Qi layer. Even though they had underestimated Lin Feng, it was still incredible that they hadn't even been able to withstand his sword. Besides, if it had been somebody else at the same level as them, they wouldn't have been able to resist the power of the scorching sword either. They would have inevitably died as well. These few noble and wealthy young men were realizing that the carefree young man, who had come to the imperial city not long ago, had now become extremely strong. He had become so monstrously strong that if anybody provoked him, he didn't hesitate to kill them. Yu Tianxing, a direct descendant of the Yu clan, had died. Then, two cultivators of the Xian Qi layer from the Yu clan had just been killed in an instant. The crowd weren't the only people who were astonished. Yu Qiu was feeling the same, and he was blankly staring at Lin Feng. A moment before, these two cultivators were at the second Xian Qi layer. They were directly under his control. Even Yu Tianxing had no authority over them. Yu Qiu thought that by relying on these two people, he would easily be able to get rid of Lin Feng. He had thought that it would be a simple task, but in the end, the reality was not as simple as that. He had sent two cultivators of the Xian Qi layer to kill Lin Feng, and they died inside that scorching sword light. Yu Qiu hadn't even had a single opportunity to intervene and save them. That boy has to die. Yu Qiu narrowed his eyes. His deadly energy was getting stronger and stronger. Lin Feng already posed a threat to him and his clan. Lin Feng's natural abilities were monstrous and beyond human. In the past, at the Celestial Academy, Yu Qiu had assisted Heimo when he fought with Lin Feng, but at that time, it hadn't been easy for Lin Feng to defeat Heimo. Back then, Lin Feng had only just broken through to the 6th Ling Qi layer, which in Yu Qiu's eyes was nothing. He used to consider Lin Feng as a tiny little insect, but at that moment, not much time had passed and Lin Feng was already able to kill the two strong cultivators who were always by his side. If he didn't kill Lin Feng in a few years, he would become even more terrifying. Lin Feng stepped on his sword made from pure qi. He was standing in the air and looking down at Yu Qiu. He then said, sounding cold and detached, "Don't you want to cut off my hands and feet? Why are you not coming to attack me?" When Lin Feng finished talking, the crowd's hearts were violently twitching. Lin Feng was, as rumored, extremely fearless. He was standing in the air, fearlessly facing Yu Qiu. Battle energy was burning around his body and he was inviting Yu Qiu to come and fight. The crowd was just realizing that, from the beginning to the end, Lin Feng had never been afraid of Yu Qiu. Only, the Yu clan were so arrogant to believe that Lin Feng would be scared of them and wouldn't dare act against them, which is why they kept threatening Lin Feng. Yu Qiu, when he understood that Yu Tianxing's life was in Lin Feng's hands, had kept threatening Lin Feng, which had led to Yu Tianxing's death. Yu Qiu's facial muscles were completely rigid. He was dumbstruck. Lin Feng was surprisingly challenging him. Even though, amongst his group of friends, he was one of the weakest, he had still broken through to the 4th Xian Qi layer. That meant that when walking through the imperial city, the people who could defeat him were very rare, and those who could were very powerful and influential people. But at that moment, Lin Feng was surprisingly challenging him while looking down at him from the sky. Yu Qiu felt humiliated. It was an extreme humiliation. "You want to die. said Yuqiu, sounding ice cold. He raised his head and looked at Lin Feng and said, "Today you killed one of the descendants from my clan. I already told you your friends and family will all die. Even if the second prince can protect them for a while, he will not be there to protect them forever. As long as the Yu clan exists, it will become the worst nightmare for anyone who is close to you." Lin Feng was looking down at Yuqiu and replied, "After the words you have just spoken, when I, Lin Feng, leave here today to the Yu clan, I will become the greatest danger and I will not stop until it is thoroughly removed from this world. Do you think that you will have the opportunity to escape alive?" An incredible deadly qi emerged from Yuqiu's body and transformed into a white light which flickered through the air. At that moment, Yuqiu was standing on something which looked like a mountain. When Lin Feng sensed the deadly qi, he also released some deadly qi, as well as some battle energy which started to burn around his body. Lin Feng was only focusing on the battle. He had to give it his full attention. He was also slightly scared, which was good as long as it didn't create a hindrance, otherwise, it would be pointless for fear to exist. Lin Feng wasn't like Yu Tianxing. Lin Feng didn't want to rely on other people to protect him. He only wanted to rely on himself, but in order to save other people, he had to have the power to save himself first. The crowd found Lin Feng extremely inspiring. He had an incredible determination. He would rather die than surrender. Even if he wasn't as strong as his adversary, he would never give up. Yu Tianxing's arrogance and pride was superficial. Lin Feng had bravery engraved on his bones. "It's useless." Yuqiu smiled in an ice-cold way and stamped onto the ground. At that moment he rose into the air at incredible speed. His pure qi transformed into a magnificent stream towards Lin Feng. "Pierce!" shouted Lin Feng furiously. His sword pierced through the atmosphere. Yuqiu was way too quick, and Lin Feng immediately released the energy condensed in his sword. Boom! The entire atmosphere vibrated and in powerful strength crashed against Lin Feng's body. It seemed like the entire power of his sword was under an incredible pressure. Lin Feng's body was blown backwards at an incredible speed. No matter if it was strength or speed, Lin Feng couldn't compete with a cultivator at the 4th Xianqi layer. 3 Xianqi layers of difference was huge. Whistling sounds filled the air and a huge purple lake appeared in the sky above Lin Feng. It then wrapped itself around Lin Feng's body and caught him as he was flying through the air. In an instant, a myriad of purple snakes emerged from his hand. At that moment, it seemed like an endless quantity of purple snakes were emerging from Lin Feng's hand and spreading through the atmosphere. "It's Lin Feng's spirit, amazing. It's Lin Feng's spirit, amazing." When the crowd saw the 1,000 purple snakes in the air, their hearts started pounding. If a cultivator of the same level as Lin Feng was caught by his spirit, they were sure to die. Yuqiu was also astonished, but he instantly regained his calm and said coldly, "Your spirit?" When facing a cultivator of a much higher level, they are of no use. When he finished talking, Yuqiu's silhouette flickered and he rushed straight towards Lin Feng. Highest! What seemed like an endless amount of purple snakes launched themselves straight towards Yuqiu. Yuqiu hadn't even arrived in front of Lin Feng yet, but the purple snakes were already wrapped tightly around him. "Break!" shouted Yuqiu furiously. The pure qi around his body transformed into a blade and started cutting the snakes as they reached him. At the same time, he joined both of his hands and a monstrously brutal pure qi emerged. Suddenly, an extremely brutal qi started to tear apart the snakes which were obstructing Yuqiu's way. Yuqiu's body continued to move forward through the snakes. Meanwhile, the purple snakes which were in a chaotic position were roaring loudly while being torn into pieces. When you have a much stronger opponent in front of you, even if your spirit is strong, it will be of no use, thought the crowd. The spirit helped a cultivator during a battle. A monstrously strong spirit could make a cultivator quicker and stronger, but if the two opponents' cultivation levels were too different, the spirit wouldn't be of any use against the stronger opponent. If the level difference was huge, the spirit was absolutely useless. At that moment, Lin Feng and Yuqiu's cultivation levels were quite different. It was extremely hard for cultivators of the Xianqi layer to break through each layer. Besides, the difference in strength between the different Xianqi layers was immense. Lin Feng could already kill cultivators of the 2nd Xianqi layer, but cultivators of the 3rd Xianqi layer were on a different level than the former. concerning cultivators of the fourth Qianqi layer, the difference was already huge in comparison with the second Qianqi layer. They could not even be compared. Lin Feng had just broken through to the first Qianqi layer, and Yu Qiu was a cultivator of the fourth Qianqi layer. Even though the Yu clan was the weakest of the three great clans, they were not easy to defeat. At least, apart from the two other great clans, no other clan could hold a candle to them. When Lin Feng saw that his spirit was getting torn apart, he suddenly closed his eyes and penetrated into a world of darkness. It seemed like everything around him was being processed in his mind, as if he was looking down on the world from above. After having penetrated into the Earth Fusion dimension, Lin Feng hadn't needed to enter his world of darkness. He could activate his Earth Fusion in the blink of an eye, and the clarity of the world surrounding him as well as his perceptions were similar to when he was in his world of darkness. But when he was in his world of darkness, there were still some small differences. There was absolutely no sound in his world of darkness. Behind Yu Qiu, the purple snakes gathered into a group, but at that moment, there weren't many of them remaining. Instead, one gigantic dragon appeared in their place without a single sound or sign of its presence. On its colossal and ferocious face, the eyes slowly opened. That gigantic dragon was clearly powerful. At that moment, it didn't even look like a spirit anymore. It looked like a real ferocious beast. It was terrifying. When the crowd saw that gigantic and monstrous dragon open its eyes, their hearts started to race. Those eyes were terrifying. It seemed like everything was drowning into those eyes, as if to those eyes, the lives of everybody meant nothing. The scariest thing was that it gave no presence and was completely silent. However, Yu Qiu didn't sense the dragon or any other signs of danger, and continued rushing towards Lin Feng. But at that moment Yu Qiu suddenly started shaking. Even though he hadn't realized that the dragon appeared, considering his cultivation level, his senses were extremely acute. It was as if Yu Qiu had sensed a pair of gigantic eyes were staring at his back. He abruptly turned around and the gigantic dragon had already arrived behind him. Ruoar. The gigantic purple dragon roared, which caused the atmosphere to shake. The crowd's hearts were pounding inside their chests. The gigantic dragon's mouth was open and its sharp teeth could be seen. It moved its gigantic mouth straight towards Yu Qiu. It was going to swallow him whole. The crowd could already see Yu Qiu being eaten, as if Yu Qiu's strength meant nothing to the dragon, as if he was already dead. Boom! Yu Qiu released a terrifying quantity of energy which burst out from his body. Then an endless amount of white lights appeared behind him and spread through the air. They were sharp, brutal, and were moving straight towards the gigantic dragon. At the same time, he released an incredible quantity of pure qi which formed a hurricane that moved towards the white lights. At that moment, the crowd had the feeling that their ears were painful and an endless quantity of sharp noises were piercing their minds. Immediately after, they could no longer hear. They could only see the white lights moving towards the purple dragon. These white lights all formed the characters, sound waves. The sounds seemed endless as they continued to bombard the atmosphere. Sharp sound waves were making the atmosphere vibrate. After hearing them, the atmosphere would be drowned into a deathly silence. These sound waves were filled with deadly energy and were used for destruction. Sound wave spirit. The crowd was covering their ears in an attempt to block the sounds. They could sense that their eardrums were unceasingly shaking. Blood even started to flow from the 7 facial apertures of the weaker cultivators. Their ears, eyes, nostrils, and mouth were bloody. These sound waves were driving the crowd go insane. How terrifying! The gigantic purple dragon was moving closer and closer to Yu Qiu. At the moment when the white sound waves appeared in front of it, its gigantic mouth swallowed them whole. The purple dragon was becoming slower and slower. In the end, it stopped and its purple splendor had weakened until the gigantic purple dragon completely vanished without a trace. However, it silently disappeared, covered by the sound waves. There was no space for any other sound. An extremely sharp sword pressure suddenly appeared behind Yu Qiu. He abruptly turned around and saw a dazzling sword falling down from the sky. It contained a scorching hot qi. Yu Qiu opened his mouth and sound waves poured out from his mouth. They merged with the other sound waves and the sword slowly became less and less brilliant. Besides, Lin Feng's body projected backwards as blood flowed from his mouth. Finally, Yu Qiu closed his mouth and the sound waves stopped pouring out. but the atmosphere was still filled with ear-piercing sound waves. For a prolonged period of time, the crowd could still feel the pain inside their ears. It was as if they were slowly becoming deaf. They couldn't hear a single sound. The situation lasted for a while until the sound waves gradually vanished. The sound wave spirit of the Yu clan is very scary. People's hearts were pounding. For many of them, it was the first time that they had seen a Xianqi layer cultivator from the Yu clan use a sound wave spirit. Once was enough to astonish them. That intangible spirit was terrifying. It seemed as if nothing could stop it. But Lin Feng made Yu Qiu release his spirit. He's also monstrously strong, thought the crowd while looking at the fearless young man, who had blood running from the corner of his mouth. They were astonished. A moment before, his gigantic purple dragon was terrifying. If it had been them, they would have immediately been swallowed. Besides, Lin Feng had made Yu Qiu use his full strength. Even though Lin Feng had lost, it was still a glorious achievement. But would that monstrously strong genius die here? Yu Qiu was still staring at Lin Feng, and his desire to kill was getting more intense. He was a cultivator of the fourth Xianqi layer and had to use all of his strength against Lin Feng. That was a humiliation. Yu Qiu had the impression that he had just lost his prestigious reputation. He had just lost a great deal of face. The Yu clan hated Lin Feng and Yu Qiu had just been humiliated by Lin Feng. The only way to fix the situation was to kill Lin Feng. Lin Feng was also staring at Yu Qiu. No wonder he could attack using the power of his shouts. He had a sound wave spirit. The spirit of the Yu clan was the sound wave spirit. Even though it wasn't as strong as the sealed doors spirit of the Duan clan, it was also extremely strong. It was a terrifyingly powerful spirit. Lin Feng, remember that you will not be dying alone. I will also kill all the people you love, said Yu Qiu, sounding like a demon. Immediately after, he opened his mouth and once again released his sound waves. Die. After speaking, it seemed like Yu Qiu's sound waves had become as sharp as blades. Besides, it was almost impossible to dodge a sound attack. It immediately crashed into Lin Feng's eardrums, making him groan in pain. With Lin Feng's cultivation level, it was impossible for him to block such a powerful sound wave attack. Brother! Shouted Duan Xinyi to Duan Wuya when she saw that Lin Feng was in danger. She looked extremely worried. Brother! Shouted Duan Xinyi to Duan Wuya when she saw that Lin Feng was in danger. She looked extremely worried. Nothing will happen, said Duan Wuya while staring at the silhouettes fighting in the sky. His eyes were filled with intangible confidence. Nothing could happen to Lin Feng. Zhuge Wuqing was back in Shuiyu. If Lin Feng got killed in the lovesick forest, it would mean that Duan Wuya was blind. Duan Xinyi saw that Duan Wuya was confident, but she was still extremely worried. At that moment, Yu Qiu had only one desire: to kill Lin Feng. Besides, if he had the opportunity, he would immediately kill him. Lin Feng couldn't defend against Yu Qiu's attacks, so Duan Xinyi was wondering why Duan Wuya was so confident. However, worrying was also of no use. With her low cultivation level, she couldn't block Yu Qiu, therefore, she had no choice but to wait and see. Lan Jiao was also fixedly staring at Duan Wuya. Duan Wuya had invited Lin Feng here. If anything happened to Lin Feng, Duan Wuya would be responsible for Lin Feng's death. But nobody shared Duan Wuya's confidence. When they saw how badly Yu Qiu was beating Lin Feng, the only thought they had was that time, it was really the time of Lin Feng's death. Yu Qiu was enraged and would not stop before he killed Lin Feng. Lin Feng already couldn't fight back anymore. After a short moment, Lin Feng would be defeated. What a pity Lin Feng was such a monstrous genius, but because he had persistently provoked the Yu clan and Yu Qiu, he was going to die. The third elder of the Yu clan fighting against a teenager in itself was already unfair, but in that world, did fair matter? The weak were the prey of the strong. Strength was the only thing that could change one's destiny. Killing someone was sometimes only a matter of seconds. Lin Feng was strong, therefore he had the power to kill Yu Tianxing. At that moment, Yu Qiu was stronger than Lin Feng, therefore he had come to avenge Yu Tianxing. It seemed like killing Lin Feng was perfectly justified. Being stronger than Lin Feng was enough of a reason. Boom! Even more sound waves bombarded the atmosphere. They were filled with deadly energy. Yu Qiu had already arrived next to Lin Feng and blasted him, flying with a sound wave attack. Lin Feng was shaking from head to toe. He was sent hurtling through the sky again and again. Blood was unceasingly flowing from his mouth. Lin Feng's eyes were firmly closed. In his world of darkness, he could sense everything very distinctly, but his strength wasn't sufficient to react in time to block Yu Qiu. "You are quite resistant," joked Yu Qiu. His silhouette flickered and he released a monstrously brutal pure qi. A white light enveloped Lin Feng's body and a terrifying punch bombarded the atmosphere, rushing towards Lin Feng. In front of Lin Feng, a sword started to flicker and appear, but it instantly vanished when it came into contact with the attack. Yu Qiu's fist was bombarding Lin Feng's body. Lin Feng's body was instantly blown away again. Blood was gushing from his mouth. But Lin Feng continued to keep his back straight and his head held high. No matter if he won or lost, no matter if he died or kept living, he would always stand tall. Boom! A monstrous deadly energy appeared in front of Lin Feng. His sword started to manifest in front of him. But his sword wasn't dazzling anymore. Instead, it was a deadly black sword. That sword was filled with shocking quantities of deadly and battle energy. That sword even seemed like it had a life of its own. In Lin Feng's world of darkness, his celestial book was floating in the air. The sword was in suspension above the celestial book. Huh. The crowd was a bit surprised. Even though Lin Feng was repeatedly being bombarded by Yu Qiu's attacks, he surprisingly still had the strength to condense such a strong sword. It was much stronger than everything he had used until that moment. Lin Feng looked extremely determined. Yu Qiu's eyes revealed his surprise. Lin Feng was his sworn enemy, however. Yu Qiu couldn't help but really admire such a fearless and determined young man. If he didn't die, Shui Yu would have another monstrous genius. Unfortunately, he was not going to live another day. Die! The sound waves hurtled forward. The white light from the sound waves transformed into horizontal beams which moved straight towards Lin Feng. At the same time, Yu Qiu joined his hands and transformed his pure qi into a sharp blade. He then threw himself through the air. Yu Qiu's body transformed into a bright blade which rushed towards Lin Feng. Boom! The sound waves and the black sword collided. Suddenly, a gigantic and terrifying light appeared from the collision. But Yu Qiu was also about to arrive. The blade crashed into the black sword. The sword started to crack and Yu Qiu's body was slowly moving closer. Die! Shouted Yu Qiu furiously again. Lin Feng, who was receiving those powerful blows, was shaking violently. He couldn't feel the weight of his sword anymore, as if it had shattered. At the moment when Yu Qiu's blade made from pure qi was about to reach him, a purple snake crashed against Lin Feng, which sent him away from the attack. Thanks to the force provided by the purple spirit, Lin Feng was able to retreat backwards and dodge the powerful blade made from pure qi. Cough cough. Lin Feng moved back 100 meters and could no longer hold himself back from coughing vast amounts of blood. The pure qi under his feet seemed to be growing weaker, as if it could crash at any moment, but Lin Feng still continued to stand tall. What incredible determination! The crowd was looking at Lin Feng in the sky. Even though he was injured, he remained proud and unflinching. After Yu Qiu's monstrous attacks, Lin Feng continued to stand straight and look his opponent in the eye. His toughness and tenacity were a source of inspiration for the others. Yu Qiu was intensely staring at Lin Feng and said, sounding cold and detached, "We will see you how you intend to stop this one." When he finished talking, Yu Qiu started releasing his pure qi again, which moved straight towards Lin Feng like an arrow. The fact that he had to use so much energy against Lin Feng was starting to annoy him. "Brother, we can't just stand here," shouted Duan Xian Yi when she sensed Yu Qiu's qi, while looking at Lin Feng's injuries getting worse and worse with time. She was so afraid that if Yu Qiu attacked again, Lin Feng would be killed under his blade. She knew that Duan Wuya had the strength to prevent Yu Qiu from killing Lin Feng. Duan Wuya's strength was even more terrifying than what the normal people could imagine. "Trust me, if there's a problem, I'll attack." Duan Wuya was staring at the two silhouettes in the sky. What a strong resistance! Even with all of this, there were no signs of interrupting the fight. Was Lin Feng going to become tougher after being so badly beaten and wounded? But he also had a surprise for Lin Feng. If Lin Feng had enough free time, he would ask Lin Feng to take a larger role in his faction. Lin Feng was silent. His eyes were closed and he was inside his world of darkness. His celestial book was insanely shaking. Its pages looked like flowing waves. Lin Feng had the sensation that the celestial book was trying to open a new page. Lin Feng was focusing entirely on his book. Nothing else could distract him from the book. The light was becoming brighter and brighter. The book was also shaking more and more intensely as if a new page was about to open. Besides, outside, Yuqiu didn't seem willing to give Lin Feng any more chances. He was staring at Lin Feng as his powerful energy filled the atmosphere. "This time, die!" shouted Yuqiu, sounding ice cold. He raised his hand and released a brutal qi. He then threw himself towards Lin Feng again. This time Lin Feng was going to be killed on the spot. Yuqiu wouldn't give Lin Feng any other opportunities. When the crowd saw Yuqiu's monstrous attack and Lin Feng who wasn't reacting at all, they just had one thought: Lin Feng was going to die. He had time to stop Yuqiu's attack. "Lin Feng, die!" shouted Yuqiu furiously when he saw that Lin Feng wasn't reacting at all, but at that moment, a sharp whistling sound spread through the atmosphere. It wasn't very loud, but it was extremely sharp, which surprised Yuqiu, who had the feeling that he had just been pricked by a needle. Huh! Yuqiu turned around and immediately saw a light which looked like a colorful ribbon and moved straight towards him. That soft and flexible thing seemed like a sharp weapon, like a deadly hidden weapon. Besides, it was extremely quick. What's going on? Yuqiu was dumbstruck. He couldn't take care of Lin Feng at that moment, so he changed the trajectory of his hand and aimed at the light that was moving towards him. Boom! Yuqiu's body was propelled backwards. The light was spinning in circles like a hurricane. Whoosh! Another sound which astonished the crowd. They looked behind Yuqiu and saw that several more lights were emerging from the bamboo forest and moving towards him at the speed of lightning. Yuqiu also sensed it and was astonished. He then immediately moved back in the other direction. On both of his sides there was a ribbon. All he could do was move back. But Yuqiu hadn't even moved much when two more lights appeared from nowhere and immediately moved towards Yuqiu as well. Yuqiu was surrounded by these lights which looked like ribbons. Immediately after, he was completely encircled and all these lights were moving towards him. It seemed like every possible movement were certain death. What's going on? Who's controlling these ribbons? They are terrifying. People's hearts were pounding violently. People who dared cause trouble in the lovesick forest were extremely rare at this moment. There were 4 colorful ribbons being controlled, which had attacked silently. Did it mean that 4 strong cultivators had appeared in the lovesick forest? The crowd was staring at that colorful sphere and saw unceasing flashing lights. Besides, someone was still moving inside. It was obviously Yuqiu struggling inside the sphere. Who was behind that powerful attack? The crowd was stupefied. In a flash, that person had managed to force Yuqiu into becoming a prisoner of that sphere. What a terrifying power! At that moment, at the location where each ribbon emerged, silhouettes appeared. The silhouettes moved towards the sphere, which made the crowd frown. There were 4 colorful ribbons, each with a different person holding a different ribbon. Their faces were all covered with fine gauzes and their hair was fluttering through the air. Surprisingly, they were all women. They were all pulling on the long colorful ribbons to approach the sphere. The way they were moving through the air made them look like celestial beings. Many people thought that it looked very dreamlike. While the crowd was absent-minded as if in a dream, the 4 silhouettes had already arrived at the sphere. They then put their beautiful slender and white hands onto the surface. Instantly, a horrible shriek pierced through the atmosphere. Yuqiu was obviously the source of that shriek. Yuqiu was the prisoner of that sphere and had to endure 4 extremely powerful attacks at the same time. Nobody knew who the 4 women were, but Yuqiu had offended them, and they had attacked him without the slightest degree of mercy. Besides, the other people who were present in the lovesick forest looked puzzled. They were wondering whether these women were sent by the owner of the forest. Maybe they were attacking Yuqiu because of his furious shouts using sound waves had broken the calm and tranquility of the forest. However, the crowd had never come across the owner of the lovesick forest. The rumors said that they were always present. However, they were staying in a forbidden location within the forest. It was said that nobody could enter that forbidden place and the owner also never came out. Yu Tianchun pulled a long face. How could this be? He was a member of the Yu clan. He, of course, knew who the owner of the lovesick forest was. How could they ruin such a great moment for Yu Tianchun? He had always really wanted to see Lin Feng die. Lin Feng was only a half step away from being killed, but these four women appeared out of nowhere and had immediately attacked Yu Qiu. Yu Tianchun was wondering if they had done that protect Lin Feng. What was really happening? Only Duan Wuya knew what was happening. He also understood what all of this meant. She had finally come out and was finally attacking. Everything was happening just as he had anticipated and planned. Lin Feng had killed Yu Tianxing as well as the two strong cultivators of the Xianqi layer, who belonged to the Yu clan. Then Yu Qiu wanted to kill Lin Feng. Lin Feng had become the sworn enemy of the Yu clan, so they would not stop until they took his life. It seemed like Lin Feng was definitely going to die, but Duan Wuya was perfectly aware of the fact that while she was here, who would dare try to kill Lin Feng? 18 years before, she was just like the prodigious cultivator of the Duan clan. She was also one of the most dazzling geniuses of Shuiyu. At that moment, the genius of the Duan clan was already hidden in the depths of the imperial palace, controlling everything. However, nobody knew where she was. She had become a legend. Unfortunately, her husband had been sealed by the Duan clan, otherwise, the Yu clan would have been powerless to resist them. In the atmosphere, a monstrous qi was emerging. The colorful sphere broke apart, and the colorful ribbons broke into small pieces. Yu Qiu once again appeared in the crowd's field of vision again. However, at that moment Yu Qiu seemed different from a moment before. A moment before, Yu Qiu was extremely aggressive and wanted to kill Lin Feng. But at that moment Yu Qiu's body was covered with wounds and his qi was weak. Besides, the light in his eyes had become pallid, which made him look simple-minded. He blankly gazed into the distance, yet he still looked like he wasn't resigned to giving up. He was a fool because he still didn't know why he had provoked the anger of these women. He had to endure 4 attacks at the same time. He didn't resign to give up because he was the prestigious third elder of the Yu clan and was a strong cultivator at the 4th Xianqi layer. However, his cultivation was crippled by these 4 powerful women of the Xianqi layer. He didn't even know the reason as to why his cultivation had been crippled. At that moment Yu Qiu just had the feeling that his world had collapsed around him. He seemed like he had abandoned his mind to despair. Yu Qiu's hands and legs were still tied by the colorful ribbons. At that moment the 4 lithe and graceful silhouettes shook their hands, and in a flash, Yu Qiu's body was thrown into the horizon. At the same time the 4 women said something. From now on, all members of the Yu clan are banned from entering the Lovesick forest. If they attempt even half a step into the forest, they will be killed for their offense. While talking, the 4 silhouettes flickered at the same time, disappeared into the bamboo forest. In a flash they were gone. In the air, the broken colorful ribbons were still fluttering powerlessly through the wind, as if these 4 silhouettes were simply imagined. From that day on, the Yu clan was banned from entering the Lovesick forest. Obviously, these words had proved who these 4 women were. They represented the owner of the Lovesick forest and were in charge of informing the Yu clan that they were banned from coming back to the forest. Not only had Yu Qiu's cultivation been crippled, but the entire Yu clan was banned from entering the Lovesick forest ever again. If they violated that rule, they would be killed. Boom! Yu Qiu's body violently crashed onto the ground and blood burst into the air. His entire body was a wreck. Yu Qiu was blankly staring towards the disappearing silhouettes and screamed with both grief and fury. Why? Why? Nobody would answer his question. The crowd didn't understand what just happened either. They didn't understand why Yu Qiu was so violently attacked and why the Yu clan had been banned from entering. Could it be that because Yu Qiu violated the calm and tranquility of the forest? But Lin Feng had killed Yu Tianxing and nobody did anything. However, Lin Feng was still indifferently standing in the air. His eyes were closed as if nothing had happened. Many people were startled at this scene. Did it have anything to do with Lin Feng? No, it's impossible. It can't have anything to do with Lin Feng. People in the crowd quickly refuted their idea that it could have anything to do with Lin Feng. The owner of the Lovesick forest was an extraordinary person, while Lin Feng just a marquis of Yangzhou City. It wouldn't be anything to do with him. No, it's impossible. It can't have anything to do with Lin Feng. People in the crowd quickly refuted their idea that it could have anything to do with Lin Feng. The owner of the lovesick forest was an extraordinary person while Lin Feng just a marquis of Yangzhou City. It wouldn't be anything to do with him. Perhaps that the owner of the lovesick forest decided to attack Yu Qiu because she couldn't bear seeing how arrogant and aggressive he was, after all. Everybody had compassion when seeing the weak being bullied, so maybe the owner had compassion for Lin Feng. That would be perfectly normal. Many people looked to Yu Qiu in the distance. He looked dispirited and his hair was extremely messy. They all felt compassion and pity for him, the prestigious third elder of the Yu clan, who was a cultivator of the fourth Xianqi layer, had ended up in such a tragic situation. From that moment on, he was a worthless existence. Not only had he lost his prestige in the Yu clan, but he wouldn't even be able to keep his social status with such a low strength. Besides, Yu Tianxing was dead. The Yu clan would definitely blame Yu Qiu for that. This was the end. Yu Qiu was done. There was no hope left for him anymore. That was life. No matter how strong someone was, there was always someone stronger. Therefore, in the world of cultivation, people had to unceasingly become stronger in order to control their own destiny, rather than leaving their lives in the hands of others. Those who had the most strength could control the people like gods. Yu Qiu was aware that he had no future left. He was looking at Lin Feng, who was stood in the sky. His heart was feeling extremely painful. Why? He hadn't been able to kill Lin Feng yet. He made the owner of the lovesick forest furious and they crippled his cultivation. He hated Lin Feng from the bottom of his heart, but his heart was also filled with regret. If he hadn't gone to the lovesick forest to kill Lin Feng, none of this would have happened. He also hated the person who had informed him that Yu Tianxing was in danger. Yu Qiu even had doubts about the information. He wondered if it was a trap or not. At the moment he arrived, he was just in time to see Lin Feng, who was clearly moving to kill Yu Tianxing. There were also other prestigious people present as witnesses. Yu Qiu felt that he had fallen into a whirlpool of conspiracies, and his judgment day had come. Until that moment, Yu Qiu still didn't even know the person who delivered the information to him. His eyes were sparkling. He glanced around at the crowd and finally focused on someone in particular. Duan Wuya, the second prince. It seemed like Duan Xianyi and Duan Wuya were Lin Feng's good friends. Why had Lin Feng come to the lovesick forest? Yu Qiu suspected Duan Wuya to be the origin of everything that happened. Yu Qiu was suddenly struck with a feeling of foreboding. Duan Wuya moved and he looked at Yu Qiu in the distance with disdain. He then said while smiling indifferently, "You have already been expelled by the owner of the lovesick forest. Uncle Yu, how come you haven't left yet?" When Yu Qiu saw Duan Wuya's smile, he was astonished. It was him. It was definitely him. Yu Qiu's mouth twitched. His eyes looked like two endless wells of hatred. When Duan Wuya saw Yu Qiu's eyes filled with hatred, but he just continued to smile and said, "Uncle Yu, some people should give face to other people when the time comes. If they do, things can carry on as always. If they don't and instead they cater their pride and arrogance, things can get messy." When Yu Qiu heard Duan Wuya's words, he was certain. It was Duan Wuya. The person who gave the information and lured him here was Duan Wuya. Duan Wuya really seemed to be the one at the origin of these events. It seemed like Duan Wuya was insinuating that Yu Qiu had made him lose face, therefore, he had to pay the price. However, how could Duan Wuya anticipate that the owner of the lovesick would attack Yu Qiu? The owner would never listen to Duan Wuya's orders. "You're so treacherous," said Yu Qiu with an evil tone which surprised Duan Wuya. Duan Wuya then said indifferently, "Third Yu elder, I've always given you face and treated you with the utmost respect and you dare to humiliate me. What is this supposed to mean? You're so shameless, Duan Wuya. How majestic and prestigious is it to be born as the second prince? I wouldn't have thought that you would betray me like a shameless traitor. You're just a tiny insignificant person." Yu Qiu was spitting venomous words while fixedly staring at Duan Wuya. However, at that moment, a whistling sound spread through the air, stupefying everybody. It was at that instant everyone noticed a spear pierce through Yu Qiu's throat and his eyes filled with agony. That spear had just taken Yu Qiu's life. When the crowd saw that, they were all astonished. Yu Qiu had died, killed on the spot in front of everybody. "If anyone dares to insult His Majesty, they will die," said a silhouette dressed in black that suddenly appeared. Immediately after, the silhouette respectfully knelt in front of Duan Wuya and said, "Yu Qiu continuously insulted Your Highness. I took the initiative without asking for permission. Please punish me for this offense. How audacious! Shouted Duan Wuya furiously. He then said coldly, even if Yu Qiu behaved in an impetuous way, why did you need to kill him? Explain yourself. I decided to act without asking permission from your highness, so I will bear the full responsibility for my actions. I will bring the body back to the Yu clan and let them deal with me, said the person sounding calm and serene. They didn't look bothered. It was as if they were speaking of casual matters. Duan Wuya looked irresolute for an instant and then said, that's the only choice. Take the body to the Yu clan and let them dispose of you as they wish. Whatever they decide, you cannot disobey. Yes, your highness, replied the person while nodding. They put the spear over their shoulder with Yu Qiu still hanging loosely on end the spear, and they carried the body away like that. The crowd's heart started to pound violently when they saw the body being treated as garbage. Was he really going to apologize for his offense? Besides, was the person who had Yu Qiu attacked Duan Wuya? The crowd started looking at Duan Wuya and coldness invaded their hearts. Duan Wuya, who was so friendly, was showing a new side of his personality. Maybe Duan Wuya's goal had really been to allow the prestigious crowd to witness all these events. It was a message to let them understand that they needed to remain obedient and docile. Otherwise they would suffer the same fate as Yu Qiu. Duan Wuya turned around as if nothing had ever happened. He then turned to Lin Feng and looked at him in a strange way. At that moment, Lin Feng was calmly standing in mid-air. His qi was stable as it floated through the air. It showed absolutely no indication that he was badly injured. Besides, even for a person in perfect health, releasing such a stable qi was also very difficult to achieve. It seemed like Lin Feng was in a trance. He was surprisingly having a breakthrough. The crowd also looked at Lin Feng with strange looks. Lin Feng looked like he was completely disconnected from the world. He didn't even know that Yu Qiu had just been killed or seen the 4 women appear and save him while crippling Yu Qiu's cultivation. Lin Feng had become lost in his own world. The world of darkness belonged to Lin Feng. The celestial book was floating in the air. A multitude of colors were flashing around it. It looked resplendent. At that moment, Lin Feng was entirely focusing on his celestial book. Besides, the 3rd page of the celestial book was unceasingly shaking, and it looked like it was forcing the 2nd page to turn to reveal the 3rd page. That time the light wasn't dazzling. There wasn't the majesty of a dazzling sword. There was just an immense power which gave the sensation of death. When the 3rd page was starting to turn, something could be seen on the page. It was a black flame and it looked incredible, as if it belonged to an evil spirit. On the 2nd page of the celestial book, a black sword appeared and was filled with deadly energy and battle energy. On the 3rd page there was a black flame. Besides, that flame wasn't extremely agitated. On the contrary, it was calm and tranquil. The black flame stayed in Lin Feng's eyes for a few seconds and then vanished. Lin Feng's facial expression returned back to normal. He then glanced at the crowd stupefied. The black flame stayed in Lin Feng's eyes for a few seconds and then vanished. Lin Feng's facial expression returned back to normal. He then glanced at the crowd stupefied. At that moment, everybody was looking at him and Yu Qiu had disappeared. What happened? Asked Lin Feng while narrowing his eyes a little bit. He had distinctly seen 4 colorful ribbons in the distance and immediately after he was absorbed into the world with the celestial book. After that, he had no idea what had happened. Cough! Lin Feng coughed up some blood. The pure qi under his feet was getting weaker and weaker to the extent that it was collapsing under his weight. Lin Feng then descended from the sky and landed next to Lan Jiao. He quickly asked, "Where is Yu Qiu?" "He's dead," replied Lan Jiao surprised. That guy surprisingly didn't know anything about the moment after Yu Qiu was about to kill him, and he was just focusing on his breakthrough. He was unreal. A moment ago, 4 women appeared and crippled Yu Qiu's cultivation and announced that the Yu clan was banned from coming to the lovesick forest from now on. Then one of the princess guards killed Yu Qiu, said Lan Jiao while glancing at Duan Wuya. Lin Feng looked perplexed. Yu Qiu wanted to kill him and in the end, he had ended up dead himself. Lin Feng couldn't believe it. He knew that if Duan Wuya invited him here, nothing bad would happen. But he would have never thought that Yu Qiu was going to die as a result. Lan Jiao had just mentioned 4 women who banned the Yu clan from coming back to the lovesick forest, which meant that they represented the owner. They couldn't be Duan Wuya's people, so why did they save him and cripple Yu Chou's cultivation? Could Duan Wuya have done something? Lin Feng, you're amazing, said Duan Wuya while smiling to Lin Feng. Lin Feng had surprisingly fallen into a cultivation trance when Yu Chou was about to kill him. He was an exceptional talent. No wonder that he had such terrifying abilities. Lin Feng looked at Duan Wuya and looked confused. There were too many things that he didn't understand about what had happened. Why did Duan Wuya invite him? Had he voluntarily invited Lin Feng and Yu Tianxing at the same time hoping that Lin Feng would kill him? But if he had, what was his purpose? Besides, how come Yu Chou appeared at the precise moment when Yu Tianxing was in danger, when Lin Feng wanted to kill him? Finally, who were those 4 women? Why had they saved him and crippled Yu Chou's cultivation? Lin Feng couldn't clearly see the bigger picture. He was missing something and couldn't understand why everything happened as it did. Lin Feng, this is for you. At that moment, Duan Xanyi was handing a bottle of pills to Lin Feng which stupefied him. He then asked, "What's this?" "It's to heal your wounds," replied Duan Xanyi while smiling, after which Duan Wuya narrowed his eyes. Lin Feng understood how extraordinary these pills were when he noticed Duan Wuya's peculiar facial expression. "Princess, my wounds are not severe at all. I just need some rest and I'll be in top condition again," said Lin Feng while refusing the pills. "You called me princess again." Duan Xanyi looked disappointed and tried to hide her bitterness, which made Lin Feng smile wryly. "I'm sorry, Xanyi. All right, take these, only then will I forgive you," said Duan Xanyi while handing the bottle over to Lin Feng. Lin Feng had no alternative. He smiled wryly and accepted the bottle. Immediately after he opened it, inside there were 9 yellow pills. There was qi being released from the pills and it gave off a pleasant fragrance. Lin Feng took out a pill and swallowed it. After taking it, a pleasant and refreshing qi spread through his blood vessels, repairing his internal organs and restoring his lost blood. Lin Feng could even sense each and every single cell healing, as if every part of his body was healing at miraculous speed. What a powerful pill, thought Lin Feng. These pills were extremely precious. "Xanyi, 1 pill is enough to heal my wounds, you can keep the rest," said Lin Feng while closing the bottle again. Then he handed it back to Duan Xanyi. Duan Xanyi glanced at Lin Feng and grabbed the bottle. Those pills were precious. They were Xian-level pills of medium quality. 1 was enough to cure all of Lin Feng's wounds. Yu Tianchan, who was next to them, looked at Lin Feng with an ice-cold glare. He could see how friendly Duan Xanyi was to Lin Feng. Yu Tianchan's entire body was filled with killing intent. He deeply despised Lin Feng and wanted him dead. He even hated Yu Chou for not killing Lin Feng a moment before. If only the 4 women hadn't appeared, Lin Feng would be dead. Lin Feng's senses were extremely acute. He immediately sensed Yu Tianchan's glare. He turned around and coldly looked at Yu Tianchan. In an instant, Yu Tianchan lost his composure and started shaking while lowering his head. He didn't dare to look at Lin Feng in the eyes. Lin Feng did not hesitate to kill Yu Tianxing. If Yu Tianchan provoked him, the same thing would happen to him. Yu Tianchan hadn't become crazy. "Worthless scum," said Lin Feng, which made Yu Tianchan's heart leap. His face even turned red. In the past, that worthless scum was extremely arrogant because he was a member of the Yu clan, so he looked down on Lin Feng as if he was an insect to be crushed. However, Lin Feng was now humiliating him and calling him scum in front of everybody. Yu Tianchan didn't even dare to contradict Lin Feng. Lin Feng only had to glance at him and he would freeze in terror. He didn't even dare to look in the direction of Lin Feng any longer. Right now, standing before Lin Feng, he didn't even dare to raise his head. This was the sad reality. "Xanyi, Your Highness, I have other matters to attend, so I will take my leave," said Lin Feng while turning to Duan Xanyi and Duan Wuya. Duan Xanyi started to open her mouth. She wanted to say something but didn't know what excuse she could use to make him stay. Duan Wuya slightly smiled and nodded. "All right, no problem, you can leave. I hope that we will have the occasion to drink some more next time." "All right," said Lin Feng while slightly nodding. Then he immediately turned around and moved towards the exit of the lovesick forest. Lan Jiao was also closely following behind him. Contrary to what people might think, you are a very merciful person. Lan Jiao arrived next to Lin Feng and glanced at Lin Feng with a strange expression. Was I merciful to you? Said Lin Feng, which made Lan Jiao surprised. Was he merciful to her? At the Dongling Hill, the fire was finally extinguished and everything was burnt black. Not even a single blade of grass could grow there anymore. It was completely desolate and no one would venture there anymore. Nobody wanted to visit a place that looked like it was devastated by battle. However, at that moment, a clean and handsome young man arrived at the top of the hill. He then sat under the scorching sun as sunlight started moving towards his body and turning into brilliant flames that radiated from his body. The flames were hypnotizing. The young man at the top of the hill was obviously Lin Feng. The sunshine at the top of the hill was perfect to practice his cosmos-burning sun skill. Lin Feng closed his eyes and started to cultivate his cosmos-burning sun skill. The sunlight was shining onto his body and unceasingly penetrating his flesh. A short moment later, it seemed like Lin Feng was the center of a majestic fire. However, at that moment Lin Feng entered into his world of darkness. He had many ideas. In the middle of his world of darkness, his celestial book was also floating in the air. The black flame inside the book was undulating. Lin Feng focused his entire attention on the black fire and calmly studied it. Each and every single thought he had was about the grim fire. A deadly qi emerged from Lin Feng's body. It looked dark, evil and ice-cold, as if it had come from the depths of hell. At the same time, a black flame appeared on Lin Feng's body. The fire which was initially burning on his body surprisingly turned into a black fire. A grim and deadly black fire. The scariest part was that black flames were unceasingly appearing. Lin Feng's body was almost entirely covered with black flames. After a while, the radiant flames had entirely transformed into black flames. At that moment, in the middle of those rampaging black flames, Lin Feng looked like a demonic deity. He looked absolutely terrifying. This is a new dimension, as expected. The flames from the sun and my grim fire can merge to create something new, thought Lin Feng, who was still a bit surprised. He could already make pure qi into flames, and with the knowledge he had acquired from using grim fire, he was now able to transform qi into grim fire. However, the black flames which were burning around Lin Feng's body didn't look as overwhelming as it did in the book. It didn't seem as impressive as the image. Lin Feng's thoughts were extremely quick. The black flames around his body condensed into several tiny flames shaped as petals which then hovered in front of him. An endless quantity of flames started to emerge from his body, which was then turned into more tiny black flames, which gathered in front of Lin Feng. A black lotus which was the size of a hand hovered in front of Lin Feng. That black lotus was a grim black lotus. It contained grim fire. All the pure qi which was surrounding Lin Feng's body turned into black flames which merged with the lotus flower. The fire within his body was even more scorching and dazzling. The grim fire could merge with the sun qi, and after absorbing the grim fire back into his body after it increased in power, the power of his sun qi also increased. The sunlight was still shining down on the top of the hill. Lin Feng was sitting there smiling. He was extremely happy with his progress. He nearly died, which caused his celestial book to open itself and the grim fire was revealed. Besides, his grim fire and the flames from his cosmos-burning sun skill could fuse together, which enabled him to greatly increase the quality of his skill along with its power. Lin Feng was lacking when it came to fire. No matter whether it was to concoct pills or fabricate weapons, Lin Feng needed to control an extremely powerful fire to increase his ability. What kind of spirit is my celestial spirit? Why do I have such a spirit? Thought Lin Feng. He couldn't understand. During that cold and rainy night, his spirit had caused him unbearable pain when it awoke, but the reward was gigantic. Each page of the celestial book seemed to grant him with monstrous abilities. Warlord's sword, the grim fire. What would appear on the next page? Lin Feng didn't think too much. The path of cultivation was an extremely long and complicated one. If he achieved a certain condition, success would be achieved. Lin Feng obviously knew that thinking on it would get him nowhere. The burning flames were absorbed into Lin Feng's body, and he stopped cultivating. His silhouette flickered and he disappeared from Dongling Hill in an instant. The news about what happened in the lovesick forest hadn't spread at all, as if someone was preventing it from circulating. Even a certain somebody from the Yu clan who had witnessed the events was staying quiet. Who would dare carelessly talk about what had happened between Duan Wuya the second prince and the Yu clan? The outside world was extremely peaceful. It seemed like just another normal day. But in the lovesick forest, there were surprisingly many wealthy and noble young cultivators. As before, how could the elites of Shuiyu not know about the events that happened there? They all understood that the Yu clan was going to go through some hardships. Yu Tianxing was killed by Lin Feng, as well as 2 cultivators of the Xianqi layer, who belonged to the Yu clan. Then Yu Qiu's cultivation was crippled, and immediately after, one of Duan Wuya's guards killed him. How could all the witnesses remain calm after seeing these events happen in the lovesick forest? But the members of the Celestial Academy didn't know about it. The disciples of the Celestial Academy were mainly concerned with Qiong Bailuo. Qiong Bailuo had easily defeated Dubai. His blue void spirit was terrifyingly powerful, and the majority of the students of the Celestial Academy all considered Qiong Bailuo as the most dazzling genius of the academy. He was the top-ranked disciple of the academy. However, very few people thought that Lin Feng was the strongest student of the Celestial Academy. They had always thought that if Lin Feng fought against Qiong Bailuo, he might have a chance, but that was just speculation. At that moment, on a big public square at the Celestial Academy, many people were surrounding the central cultivation tower, and the atmosphere was bustling and lively. The crowd raised their heads and looked at the top of the cultivation tower with envy. The top of the cultivation tower was the dream of many. Those who practiced at the top of the tower were always worshipped. Everybody hoped to be able to practice at the top someday. At that moment, in the distance, some whistling sounds emerged. They had been caused by a strong wind which painfully piercing through people's eardrums. The crowd couldn't help but raise their heads and gaze into the distance. Immediately after, they saw something flying through the atmosphere. The air was being split in two, and in the middle was a magnificent white light. Huh! The crowd was stupefied and blankly staring at the sky. Immediately after, a gigantic silhouette appeared in front of them. A huge wind followed every movement from the silhouette. The wind rushed through the air just like a hurricane. The scene was incredible. A ferocious beast, a legendary rock. The crowd was staring at the huge winged beast. It was a legendary rock. In the sky above the Celestial Academy, a ferocious beast suddenly appeared. Thus, people were a bit surprised. It can't be, that's a human being. The crowd was gasping with astonishment and their hearts started pounding. That gigantic silhouette was moving nearer and nearer. The crowd could see it more clearly at that moment. That gigantic silhouette wasn't a ferocious beast. Surprisingly, it wasn't a legendary rock, instead it was a human being. Actually, that gigantic silhouette and the wings were from a spirit, a legendary rock spirit. High Official Chu Zhanpeng. In a flash, the crowd thought of someone. It was a legendary rock spirit, so it had to be Chu Zhanpeng, the High Official. Of course, nobody knew in the air. Behind that legendary rock was an ice-cold qi. At that moment, the sun was shining down upon people's bodies, but suddenly, the sky became dark and covered with clouds. The High Official Luo Shui. The crowd was astonished once more. They were absolutely right. There were 2 people in the sky, High Official Chu Zhanpeng and High Official Luo Shui. 2 high officials were surprisingly moving towards them at full speed. It seemed like there were many silhouettes that were flickering and coming towards the Celestial Academy in the distance. Besides, these people were all wearing the uniform of the Holy Courtyard, without exception. What's going on? The crowd was growing more and more anxious. These people were students of the Holy Courtyard of Shuiyu. Their facial expressions were all extremely sharp, and they were releasing an extremely powerful qi. They were all extraordinarily strong. There wasn't a single weakling amongst them. Those people were all charging towards the Celestial Academy at the same time. There was even the 2 strongest disciples of the Holy Courtyard of Shuiyu there. They were both high officials. It seems like something incredible is about to happen, thought the crowd. At that moment, Chu Zhanpeng had already arrived above them in the sky. The wings of the legendary rock were fluttering in the air. Immediately after, he landed at the top of the cultivation tower. That was the highest point in the Celestial Academy, and it was as if Chu Zhanpeng was putting it under his feet. That astonished all the people in the Celestial Academy. How aggressive! The crowd was staring at Chu Zhanpeng. How aggressive! The crowd was staring at Chu Zhanpeng. The cultivation tower was a symbol of the Celestial Academy. Being able to step into the cultivation tower was an honor, and the top floor was a majestic symbol of the academy. However, Chu Zhanpeng was an outsider from the holy courtyard of Shuiyu. He came to the Celestial Academy and immediately put the cultivation tower under his feet, and his intention was obvious. What Chu Zhanpeng meant was that he looked down on the Celestial Academy. He was humiliating its members. They were humiliating every member of the Celestial Academy by disrespecting the glorious symbol of the Celestial Academy. Chu Zhanpeng was a high official after all. That made the members of the Celestial Academy infuriated, but when facing one of the 8 high officials, what could they do? Getting angry at him was useless. They couldn't fight against him. Luo Shui was also in the air and then stood on the tower. He was monstrously strong, just like Chu Zhanpeng, and they both looked at the members of the Celestial Academy with disdain. The silhouettes of all the Holy Courtyard students flickered and they all formed a perfect line. They looked down on the students of the Celestial Academy. They all looked extremely arrogant. I heard that some geniuses have appeared in the Celestial Academy. Besides, 2 of them have already broken through to the Xianqi layer, said Chu Zhanpeng from the top of the cultivation tower. His voice was filled with insult and sarcasm. The Celestial Academy is becoming more and more influential. Today Luo Shui and I brought some of our fellow students so we could all learn from each other. We want to see how majestic and strong the geniuses of the Celestial Academy really are, said Chu Zhanpeng while arrogantly glancing at the crowd. Chu Zhanpeng had broken through to the Xianqi layer and had become one of the 8 high officials for the last 2 years. He wasn't lazy either. Relying on his natural abilities, he already broke through to the 3rd Xianqi layer. Whereas the insignificant insects Chong Bai Luo and Du Bai had only broken through to the 1st Xianqi layer, they wouldn't be able to compete with him. Besides, Chu Zhanpeng hadn't forgotten about Lin Feng either. In fact, he had come to the Celestial Academy for 2 reasons. One reason was obviously Lin Feng. He glanced at the students of the Celestial Academy on the ground. His 2 gigantic legendary rock wings streaked through the sky and he landed on the ground, immediately after he rose back up in the air, before landing back onto the top of the cultivation tower. Now on his side, a beautiful woman had appeared. If Lin Feng had been there, he would definitely have recognized her. It was Lin Qian. Lin Qian was standing on top of the cultivation tower looking down on the crowd. The feeling of power invaded her heart. It seemed like her pride, which had been crushed by Lin Feng, was restored in an instant. Even though her natural abilities weren't as impressive as Lin Feng's, she didn't need to be monstrously strong. As long as her lover was strong enough, she would be able to crush Lin Feng. Don't worry, Qian Qian, I will do what I promised you, said Chu Zhanpeng in a cold tone. If he had an occasion, he would definitely kill Lin Feng. He could remember back to when he had gone to the Yunhai sect. At that time, Lin Feng was still a nobody, a little insect, yet had dared to make him lose face. He should have killed Lin Feng much earlier. Lin Feng was already much stronger, and he was described as a genius by the members of the Celestial Academy. He was even respected and appreciated by the second prince, Duan Wuya. However, Chu Zhanpeng wanted to use Lin Feng to feed his ego. Why is nobody replying? Is there nobody worthwhile in the Celestial Academy? Joked Chu Zhanpeng, which stupefied the crowd beneath the cultivation tower. They wanted to deny what he had just said but didn't know what to say. Actually, they really couldn't compete with Chu Zhanpeng. After all, he was one of the 8 high officials. If they contradicted him and made him angry, that would be courting death. But at that moment, some silhouettes appeared in the distance. These silhouettes flickered. They were moving at full speed. Besides, there were also some people moving through the sky. These people were teachers of the Celestial Academy, cultivators at the Xianqi layer. They rarely came out, but at that moment, these loud and extremely arrogant people from the Holy Courtyard barged into the academy. How could the teachers not respond? Chu Zhanpeng and Luo Shui calmly and serenely looked at the silhouettes moving through the sky. They didn't look affected at all, as if they didn't even care. Chu Zhanpeng and Luo Shui have barged into the Celestial Academy. What is that supposed to mean? At that moment, a teacher from the Celestial Academy came forward and spoke to Chu Zhanpeng and Luo Shui, who were still standing on the top of the cultivation tower. I, Chu Zhanpeng, have heard that some geniuses are in the Celestial Academy. Congratulations, I admire you for that. Therefore, today I have come with some of my fellow disciples of the Holy Courtyard to learn from you and swap some advice. The Celestial Academy is now prestigious and mighty. I hope that you will be generous and allow us to learn from its members," said Chu Zhanpeng with a smile, yet not a smile on his face. What he meant was obvious. He had come to challenge the students of the Celestial Academy. The Holy Courtyard of Shuiyu and the Celestial Academy are two great academic institutions of the Imperial City. Challenges are very normal. I know that you are unlikely to refuse," added Luo Shui, sounding ice-cold. The teacher from the Celestial Academy frowned. Chu Zhanpeng and Luo Shui had been famous for a while already, and he was wondering how strong they had become. But what he feared the most was that they were already able to sweep away the disciples of the Celestial Academy. Chu Zhanpeng and Luo Shui, what kind of advice do you seek? Since both our Holy Courtyard and your Celestial Academy can exchange a lot, we should, of course, select the same number of students. If you want a group fight, we don't mind either," replied Chu Zhanpeng. The teacher of the Celestial Academy was a bit surprised. Even though the Celestial Academy was quite strong, they had started from nothing, unlike the Holy Courtyard, which immediately gathered the best disciples from the greatest sects in the country. It was strong directly from the moment of its creation. The Celestial Academy was obviously weaker than the Holy Courtyard of Shuiyu. Choosing the same number of people for a battle would definitely lead to the defeat of the Celestial Academy. They had no chance of winning. If you are afraid that it would end up in the Celestial Academy getting humiliated, we can make it even more simple. You can immediately choose the two strongest and most gifted students of the Academy, and they can fight against Luo Shui and me," joked Chu Zhanpeng. The members of the Celestial Academy were insulting them in their hearts. Chu Zhanpeng and Luo Shui were high officials. Who could battle against them? Even Xiongbai Luo couldn't rival them. He would definitely lose if he tried. It seemed like the Celestial Academy had absolutely no chance of winning such a challenge. "All right, I will choose two people who will fight against you," said the teacher of the Xianqi layer of the Celestial Academy. The crowd was dumbstruck. Surprisingly, he had agreed. Chu Zhanpeng was also astonished, but still found the situation extremely amusing. Weren't they acting too recklessly by accepting his challenge? "But not right now," added the teacher. He then added, "Soon there will be the grand tournament of the Imperial City. At that moment, you and Luo Shui will participate as well. The students that I have chosen will also participate, and you will have a chance to fight against them during the tournament." Chu Zhanpeng was surprised. He hadn't expected his interlocutor to calculate to such a degree. Indeed, the grand tournament of the Imperial City would start soon, and as high officials, Chu Zhanpeng and Luo Shui were obviously going to participate. The grand tournament would be especially important for geniuses. The Celestial Academy would also pick some students to attend. Surprisingly, the teacher had also chosen that day for Chu Zhanpeng's challenge. "That's my condition, otherwise, the Celestial Academy will disregard your challenge," explained the teacher from the Celestial Academy. Chu Zhanpeng's eyes were flashing with thoughts. He remained silent for a while. Then Luo Shui and he glanced at each other, immediately smiled and nodded. Luo Shui and Chu Zhanpeng would have time to prepare themselves and become even stronger during that period. It didn't seem like there was a downside. "All right, I accept," nodded Chu Zhanpeng. "I hope that on the day, the Celestial Academy will not choose two worthless cultivators. Otherwise we will be able to take advantage of it, and the Celestial Academy will become the joke of the Imperial City," joked Chu Zhanpeng. Immediately after, he rolled up his sleeves. A strong wind filled the area. The wings of the legendary rock opened. He then rose into the air and flew away. "Let's go," said Luo Shui indifferently. He immediately started floating in the air and moved through the sky as if he was taking a gentle stroll. He looked natural and relaxed. When the people of the Holy Courtyard of Shuiyu saw these two leave, they then all gradually started to follow. Very quickly, they all disappeared. However, their despicable and detestable behavior, even after they left, was still making the members of the Celestial Academy suffer. When the teacher saw them leaving, his eyes twinkled. He glanced at the crowd and said, "It's already been 10 years now. The great competition of Shueyu will start soon. I hope that you will all seize that opportunity and be even more motivated to constantly become stronger." When the teacher saw them leaving, his eyes twinkled. He glanced at the crowd and said, "It's already been 10 years now. The great competition of Shueyu will start soon. I hope that you will all seize that opportunity and be even more motivated to constantly become stronger." The great competition of Shueyu. The crowd was astonished. They had already heard about it. Every 10 years, the entire region of Shueyu held a great competition, where the elite cultivators of all the 13 countries of Shueyu gathered. Every 10 years, when the great competition of Shueyu took place, the entire region became more lively, while rivers of geniuses started to reveal themselves. During the rise of the geniuses, challenges and battles were important. It was also a chance to seize an opportunity. Therefore, the teacher was telling everybody to seize that opportunity. Even if that time they couldn't participate to the great competition of Shueyu, they could observe the incredible geniuses and try to walk down the same path, and even try to surpass them someday, becoming powerful cultivators. However, before the great competition of Shueyu, some officials of the Dragon Mountain Empire will come to Shueyu and choose the most outstanding cultivators from Shueyu to participate in the competition, continued the teacher. The Empire of the Dragon Mountain was in control of Shueyu, and it was one of the 4 great empires of Shueyu. Shueyu and Tianfeng were both under the control of Dragon Mountain. However, the Dragon Mountain Empire was not going to intervene in Shueyu's internal affairs. Every 10 years, they went to Shueyu and selected some outstanding geniuses to participate in the Shueyu Great Competition and fight against the geniuses of the 3 other great empires. Of course, we won't let the people of the Dragon Mountain Empire come here and see a bunch of trash. Therefore, before the team from the Dragon Mountain Empire comes to Shueyu, Shueyu organizes its own grand tournament, which the most outstanding disciples from the country are chosen to display their strength and talent when the Dragon Mountain Empire comes to collect the talented individuals. In order to be considered as talented by the Dragon Mountain Empire, 2 factors are decisive: strength and natural abilities. If the Dragon Mountain Empire attaches importance to you, even if you are not very strong at the moments, your future is filled with countless opportunities. The teacher said, which made the crowd palpitate from excitement. Even if they were not strong enough, if they had high natural abilities, the empire might still select them. If the empire attaches importance to them, they would be able to leave Shueyu and their future would be filled with endless opportunities. But, were their natural abilities high enough to draw the attention of the empire? Many people, when they thought about it, looked disappointed again. It was much too difficult. There were many geniuses in the empire. In order to be noticed by the empire, at least in Shueyu, they had to be extraordinary and stand out. They, of course, weren't those kinds of people. Maybe Lin Feng, with his natural abilities, would draw the empire's attention, as Lin Feng's strength wasn't yet sufficient to draw their attention. For the grand tournament, the Celestial Academy will be able to send 5 students. In other words, only 5 will be able to participate. Whether you are chosen or not and whether you will have the opportunity to be noticed by the empire depends on you. Just look at yourselves and you will know," said the teacher when he saw how excited the crowd looked. He then added, "Besides, as you saw a moment ago, amongst these 5 people, I will choose 2 people to fight against Chu Zhanpeng and Luo Shui." Fight against Chu Zhanpeng and Luo Shui? The crowd looked perplexed. Was it even possible to fight against them? Chu Zhanpeng and Luo Shui were 2 of the 8 high officials, and it had been that way for 2 years already. They were both in the Xianqi layer when they were selected, relying on their natural abilities. How strong had they become in the past 2 years? They, at least, must have broken through to the second Xianqi layer. The Celestial Academy had no genius who could be compared with them. Maybe Chongbai Luo and Dubai had a chance, but Dubai was now a cripple. Of course, Lin Feng had cut off Dubai's arm. He could also be counted as one of the selected 5. Lin Feng was easily able to cut off Dubai's arm. Even though his cultivation level was lower, he could defeat cultivators at the Xianqi layer, which meant that he was just as strong as someone in the Xianqi layer. "I already chose one of the 2 people. For the other positions you can compete," said the teacher again. Compete? People in the crowd were secretly shaking their heads. Who would be willing to fight against one of the 8 high officials? They didn't want to die early. However, one of the fighters had already been chosen. It was probably Chongbai Luo. He was the top student of the academy. It had to be him. Who is the person you chose? At that moment, a silhouette appeared in the distance. The crowd turned around and saw someone moving through the sky, looking majestic. It was precisely Cheong Bai Luo, the top student of the academy who everybody was talking about. At that moment he looked at the teacher and asked, "Who is the person you chose?" Cheong Bai Luo seemed to care a lot about what others thought. The crowd was thrilled. It was a matter of honor for Cheong Bai Luo. He was the top disciple of the academy. The one who was chosen was probably Cheong Bai Luo. "It's not you," immediately refuted the teacher, which astonishing the entire crowd. They had guessed wrong. Cheong Bai Luo frowned and said, "If it's not me, could it be Lin Feng?" "It's not Lin Feng either, but you two would definitely be part of the 5 people. As far as the battle against the high officials is concerned, Lin Feng and you have the same chance as everyone else. You can compete and the strongest will have the opportunity." "Is there even the need to compete? Since you decided that I wasn't selected even though I should have been, does that mean that you think there are others out there who are stronger than me?" Cheong Bai Luo was annoyed. The person who was chosen surprisingly wasn't him. He was extremely annoyed. "Maybe you will get the spot or maybe someone else will beat you to it," replied the teacher of the Xianqi layer when he saw how impolitely Cheong Bai Luo was talking to him, and how annoyed he seemed to be. Even though Cheong Bai Luo was a genius, after all, he was only considered as such within the Celestial Academy. Considering how arrogantly he was talking to his seniors, it wouldn't be surprising if, after becoming extremely strong, he started to look down on the Celestial Academy. "Bullshit. Tell me, who could possibly defeat me?" furiously shouted Cheong Bai Luo. "Lin Feng could," replied the teacher in a cold and detached way while narrowing his eyes. Lin Feng and Lin Feng again. How can you people even compare me to him? I will prove to you all how foolish you are thinking that way," screamed Cheong Bai Luo in a cold tone. Back when he still hadn't broken through to the Xianqi layer, he used to be extremely introverted and wasn't arrogant at all. After breaking through to the Xianqi layer, he had started to grow extremely arrogant. This was because he became much stronger than Du Bai, and could easily become the top-ranked student of the academy. Not being able to draw every single person's attention and acknowledgement was making him furious. Since some people still doubted him, he would need to take action and show everybody that he was the best. Cheong Bai Luo turned around and looked at the palace where the military students lived. He then opened his mouth. "Lin Feng, get the hell out here. Lin Feng, get the hell out here." His extremely loud voice resonated through the atmosphere for a while. It was extremely powerful. The sound of his voice continued to travel through the atmosphere and towards the horizon. Even though the palace where the military students lived was very far, when a cultivator of the Xianqi layer shouted furiously, their voice could cover a huge distance. Inside the palace, everybody heard the voice. They couldn't help but shiver. Someone was surprisingly telling Lin Feng to get the hell out here. Silhouettes flickered. More and more people were moving towards the public square. Cheong Bai Luo was standing in the air looking at the crowd. He didn't see Lin Feng. "Humph, the person you speak about isn't courageous at all," joked Cheong Bai Luo, sounding cold and detached while glancing at the teacher. "Did you ever consider that he's not in the academy? Alright, let's assume he's not here. When he comes back, everybody tell Lin Feng that I, Cheong Bai Luo, will teach him a lesson," said Cheong Bai Luo coldly. Immediately after, he turned around, ready to leave, but at that moment, an ice-cold voice spread through the air. "Wait." Cheong Bai Luo stopped when he heard and looked at the person who was talking on the ground. Surprisingly, it was a girl and she was wearing a fine veil over her face. She looked pure and holy. "You said that you wanted to teach Lin Feng a lesson?" said Meng Qing in an ice-cold way, which made Cheong Bai Luo narrow his eyes and reply coldly, "Indeed, so what?" "Indeed." "Alright, what about you try and teach me that lesson?" said Meng Qing. In the distance, a silhouette was moving towards them. That person was looking at Cheong Bai Luo and didn't want him to leave. That person's body was surrounded by burning flames which were diffusing a bright light. That person was obviously Lin Feng. Lin Feng. When the crowd saw Lin Feng, they were surprised. Lin Feng. When the crowd saw Lin Feng, they were surprised. Bai Luo was saying that Lin Feng was cowardly and that he was the only one who had the right to fight against the high officials. He was also just saying that he wanted to teach him a lesson, but now Lin Feng appeared in front of him. It seems like the fun is about to start, thought many people in the crowd as they grew excited. Bai Luo was strong enough to beat Du Bai. Lin Feng had also defeated Du Bai and cut off his arm with a single strike. Therefore, how could people not be impatient to see Lin Feng and Bai Luo battle? That battle would definitely be marvelous. It was the most anticipated battle in the academy. Everybody considered Bai Luo and Lin Feng as the two best students of the academy. When Meng Qing saw Lin Feng arrive, her ice-cold qi completely vanished. Since he had come, Bai Luo would be left for him. When Luo saw Lin Feng moving through the sky, he narrowed his eyes. Lin Feng was rushing through the sky looking completely relaxed. Was he really still in the Ling Qi layer? Had he really not broken through to the Xian Qi layer? Lin Feng, did you break through to the Xian Qi layer? Asked Bai Luo indifferently. Indeed, said Lin Feng while stopping and looking at Bai Luo. He didn't hide anything. You and me are the same, we are both cultivators at the Xian Qi layer. I really don't understand where your arrogance comes from, and what makes you think that you could teach me anything? Humph, snorted Bai Luo coldly. He felt relieved and didn't even reply to Lin Feng, instead he just made a fun of him. If you were a cultivator of the Ling Qi layer, I would have esteem for you. Defeating a cultivator of the Xian Qi layer like Du Bai when at the Ling Qi layer is something admirable, but now it's a different story. You actually broke through to the Xian Qi layer, which is the reason you defeated Du Bai. It's not even something worth mentioning, said Bai Luo with disdain. When the crowd heard that, they all agreed with him. That's how it was. Lin Feng had surprisingly broken through to the Xian Qi layer. No wonder Lin Feng was able to defeat Du Bai. But for his age, having broken through to the Xian Qi layer was already something terrifying. If they knew that Lin Feng was still in the Ling Qi layer when he defeated Du Bai and that he had broken through to the Xian Qi layer after that, how would they react? Even Bai Luo wouldn't believe such a tale. Lin Feng didn't bother to explain anything either. There were some things which he didn't need to explain. He just needed to use his actions to make people believe. It's not worth mentioning. Strange, because when you defeated Du Bai after breaking through, you became even more arrogant and conceited, thinking that you were the best in the academy, so when you defeat Du Bai, it's more prestigious than when I do? Joked Lin Feng. Even though he heard that Bai Luo used to be introverted and modest in the past, that was the past. These days he had become extremely arrogant. Maybe because he no longer had any pressure and wasn't concealing his real nature anymore. He wanted to be famous and admired by everyone. I already said it, I will prove to everybody that I am right. I will show everybody that you, Lin Feng, cannot be compared with the likes of me. When Bai Luo finished talking, he released an ice-cold energy which surrounded Lin Feng. Lin Feng, I initially just wanted to defeat you, nothing more. But since you failed to appreciate my kindness and behave in such an arrogant manner, I will cripple your cultivation. Just take this as a lesson and in the future, know your place. Arrogant? Cripple his cultivation? Know his place? Lin Feng was dumbstruck. Bai Luo kept provoking him, and then dared say that he was the one being arrogant. Bai Luo considered himself as the only person who could be proud and others should just praise and worship him. Don't you touch him. At that moment, a voice came from the distance. It wasn't a loud voice, but it pierced through people's eardrums, making everyone freeze for a moment. That voice seemed to contain a sound attack. People raised their heads and saw silhouettes on the horizon. These people were riding white cranes. The scene was magnificent. Huh. The crowd looked perplexed though. They were wondering who these people were to surprisingly prevent Bai Luo from attacking Lin Feng. Of course, some people also started to shake when they saw these people approaching. It was the Yu clan. These people belonged to the Yu clan. Why were they coming to the Celestial Academy? Besides, they weren't allowing Bai Luo to fight against Lin Feng. Was Lin Feng suddenly friendly with the Yu clan? In the past, Lin Feng had had a huge conflict with the Bai clan, which also involved the Yu clan. Besides, he also had direct conflicts with the Yu clan. Bai Luo frowned. He could recognize these people as well, especially their leader. He had met him once. It was an elder of the Yu clan who was extremely strong. Could it be that he has an agreement with the Yu clan? Thought Bai Luo. His life is ours, the Yu clan's. Nobody can touch him. said the elder of the Yu clan, which made the people shiver. These people were really of the Yu clan and had also really come because of Lin Feng. However, they hadn't come to help him but to personally kill him. Lin Feng had surprisingly offended the Yu clan. The furious Yu clan had thus dispatched so many strong cultivators to kill Lin Feng. He was really extremely bold and daring. Qiongbai Luo was stupefied as well, but immediately after, he found the situation amusing. He glanced at the people of the Yu clan and then at Lin Feng. As expected, this guy overestimates himself. He doesn't know how vast the world is, said Qiongbai Luo indifferently. In Xueyu, there were many geniuses, but clans as strong as the Yu clan, such strong clans were extremely rare. Relying on his natural abilities, Lin Feng provoked the Yu clan. He really wanted to die. Lin Feng was just an ignorant fool. As you wish, I initially wanted to cripple his cultivation, but since he offended the Yu clan, you can have him, said Qiongbai Luo as if he had given a gift to the Yu clan. Whoever disposed of him, it seemed like he was definitely going to suffer with no possibility of escape. Why do you want to cripple his cultivation? Asked the elder of the Yu clan. I can't bear the sight of his face, so I wanted to cripple his cultivation, replied Qiongbai Luo while slightly nodding and smiling, as if he was talking about something trivial. He can't bear the sight him, so he wants to cripple his cultivation. What nerve! Thought the crowd. Qiongbai Luo initially disdained Lin Feng and didn't want to fight against him. Alright, initially I wanted to attack personally, but I like your reason. Lin Feng is yours. You can cripple his cultivation but don't kill him, said the elder in a cold and detached tone. Qiongbai Luo was a bit surprised but smiled immediately after. He then cupped his hands obediently and said politely, since it's that way, I will not restrain myself anymore and cripple his cultivation. His life will remain yours. Yes, nodded the elder. They seemed to be in perfect harmony, as if they were hunting and Lin Feng was their prey. Qiongbai Luo slowly turned around and looked at Lin Feng. A mocking smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. Lin Feng, you are pathetic, said Qiongbai Luo. That time Lin Feng didn't say anything. Pure sun qi started revolving around his fist. Immediately after, Lin Feng rushed forward and in a flash, as if he teleported there, he appeared in front of Qiongbai Luo. Lin Feng was covered in flames from head to toe. It was extremely dazzling. Pure sun qi was violently burning around his fist. It no longer looked like it was a fist but instead looked like a small sun. Lin Feng was surrounded by intense flames. These flames surrounded his fist, which shot like a meteor towards Qiongbai Luo. Everything happened in an instant. Qiongbai Luo's facial expression drastically changed. He quickly condensed his pure qi to block Lin Feng's fist. He had also thought about dodging, but considering how arrogant he was acting towards Lin Feng, did he have the face to dodge the attack? Lin Feng's fist was much too quick. He couldn't dodge even if he wanted to. All he could do was defend against it. Boom! An extremely violent and brutal qi spread through the atmosphere. The fist covered in flames rushed through the air and the crowd could see Qiongbai Luo's body being sent flying backwards. Surprisingly, his body was engulfed in flames. When Lin Feng's fist struck, his body was engulfed in scorching hot flames. Pure qi was released which extinguished the flames on his body, but Qiongbai Luo was still burnt black. Lin Feng's eyes looked incredibly cold even though they were surrounded by flames. You talk crap considering how weak you are the pathetic one, said Lin Feng, after which a hideous expression appeared on Qiongbai Luo's face. People raised their head to look at Lin Feng, who was surrounded by golden flames. People raised their head to look at Lin Feng, who was surrounded by golden flames. It seems like we underestimated Lin Feng, thought the crowd. Lin Feng's fist was powerful enough to blow Qiongbai Luo away. Besides, his body was engulfed by flames. Lin Feng wasn't by any means weak. He was much stronger than they had thought. Many of them had still thought that Lin Feng couldn't compete with Qiongbai Luo, but they were proved wrong. It was possible that Lin Feng was even at the same level of strength as Qiongbai Luo. But that would make an even better fight. The crowd was even more excited. Being able to witness such a battle was something they longed for day and night. Not bad, at least that battle will not be too boring. If you were too weak, it would be pointless to fight, said Cheong Bai Luo, who didn't look glum anymore. A cold smile had appeared on his face. He even released a little bit of his battle energy and looked very excited. The stronger Lin Feng was, the more exciting the battle would be. Cheong Bai Luo hoped that Lin Feng would be stronger than he expected. How egotistic, joked Lin Feng when he saw Cheong Bai Luo's forced smile. Considering his temperament, Cheong Bai Luo wanted to destroy Lin Feng in one attack to display his strength and feed his ego. That was the only way for him to look prestigious. However, what he just said was just a way to convince himself that he was stronger than Lin Feng. He was being extremely self-centered. I will make things even more interesting for you then, said Lin Feng, and immediately after, a sword appeared in his hands. It was bright and illuminated the entire atmosphere. It was impossible to escape from its dazzling brightness. That sword seemed to be burning with the power of the sun. The sword was like a sun illuminating the world. Many rays of light emerged from the sword, making the crowd narrow their eyes. They couldn't look at it. Their hearts started pounding. How scary! Lin Feng's sword was scorching hot like the sun. Blue Void Spirit. When Cheong Bai Luo saw that sword, his heart twitched. Immediately after, he released his spirit. Raindrops appeared behind him and then turned into a curtain of heavy rain. However, while Cheong Bai Luo was releasing his spirit, Lin Feng rushed forward and his sword light blinded many of the onlookers. That sword was a radiant sword. Cheong Bai Luo's facial expression drastically changed, and his heavy rain curtain started moving towards Lin Feng's sword to isolate it. At the same time, he retreated back at lightning speed. Zerr. Thurr. The rain curtain of the Blue Void Spirit was sliced apart, and then Lin Feng's dazzling sword slashed into Cheong Bai Luo's chest. Dark red blood splashed through the air, and a deep wound appeared on Cheong Bai Luo's chest. If he had been a little bit slower, or if he hadn't used his heavy rain curtain, the sword would have sliced his body into two parts. You're even weaker than I thought, said Lin Feng while looking at Cheong Bai Luo. He didn't kill him, he basically didn't care about Cheong Bai Luo. The whole fight was because Cheong Bai Luo wanted to use Lin Feng to prove how strong he was to everyone in the academy. Lin Feng thus decided to help him achieve his aim, and show him how ridiculous he was being. These two silhouettes were floating in the sky. Lin Feng looked carefree while Cheong Bai Luo looked weak as he was struggling to stay in the air. While looking at the scene, the crowd couldn't believe their eyes. What they thought was the complete opposite of the reality. Cheong Bai Luo should have been the arrogant victor after defeating Lin Feng in one strike. However, at that moment, the reality was completely different. Lin Feng didn't fight often, but each time he did, it was extremely brutal. Each time the crowd got to know his personality better. At the time when he had fought against Heimo, Lin Feng was unknown and Heimo was one of the top 10 students of the academy. Everybody saw the result. The second time that Lin Feng had fought at the Celestial Academy was against Du Gushang. In the end, Du Gushang had ended up kneeling in front of Lin Feng. The third time was against Du Bai and he had cut off his arm. It was a shocking and amazing battle. And then when everybody thought that Cheong Bai Luo would easily defeat Lin Feng surprised them again. Lin Feng said that Cheong Bai Luo was much weaker than he thought. The crowd had thought that Lin Feng wouldn't be able to withstand a single attack, and they believed that Lin Feng would inevitably lose the battle. But Lin Feng didn't even care about Cheong Bai Luo. Lin Feng had actually always looked beyond Cheong Bai Luo, and had never considered him as an opponent or rival. Is that so? Said Cheong Bai Luo, looking extremely sharp. Behind him, his Blue Void Spirit twinkled and flashed. He then whispered, "Blue Void Underworld." Lin Feng could cut through the raindrop curtain, but how would he break out from the Blue Void Underworld? In the sky, raindrop threads appeared and immediately transformed into a raindrop curtain, which started to pour down around Lin Feng. "Let me see how you will escape this," said Cheong Bai Luo in an ice-cold way when he saw Lin Feng being surrounded by the Blue Void Spirit. "Are you looking closely?" said a cold and indifferent voice from behind the raindrop curtain. The silhouette in the middle of the raindrop curtain split in two and suddenly there were multiple Lin Fengs. It was an afterimage left by his quick movements. After dodging, Lin Feng was still standing in the middle of the raindrop curtain and looking down at Cheong Bai Luo indifferently, as if he wasn't even moved by such trivial things. The blue void underworld was invisible and inaudible, but it was real. Raindrops immediately started pouring. The fluctuations were very subtle, and it was almost impossible to dodge that attack because by the time a cultivator sensed that it was close, it was already too late. However, Lin Feng could perceive even the tiniest movement due to his earth fusion. Even the slightest change couldn't escape his awareness. At the moment when the raindrops became visible, Lin Feng had already moved. How is this possible? Whispered Qiong Bai Luo, who was stupefied. Surprisingly, Lin Feng had already dodged the blue void spirit and appeared behind it. How was that possible? It's a coincidence, I must be right, he's just lucky and luckily managed to dodge at the right time. Qiong Bai Luo's eyes looked ice cold. In the sky, the raindrop curtain dispersed and Lin Feng appeared. Qiong Bai Luo and Lin Feng stared at each other. Suddenly, Lin Feng disappeared from his initial position. However, Lin Feng's initial position was suddenly attacked by the blue void spirit. Qiong Bai Luo was astonished. Was it a coincidence? Was Lin Feng really just lucky? The best way to dodge the blue void underworld was to be constantly changing position, not giving any opportunity for the attacks to begin. However, Lin Feng had dodged it the first time and the second time, but Lin Feng just been standing there waiting for it and still dodged it as easily as before. It seems like you rely on your worthless little spirit to act so arrogantly. Without the power of your spirit, you're nothing. You wouldn't even be Du Bai's opponent, said Lin Feng when he saw that Qiong Bai Luo was looking desperate. Lin Feng was exasperated. A cultivator spirit was linked to their cultivation. It was very important for a cultivator. An extremely strong spirit helped a cultivator become stronger much faster. But if a cultivator forgot about cultivating himself and only relied on his spirit, his expertise became extremely limited to the power of his spirit. In the end, they would be a worthless cultivator. Cultivation required a spirit, but by only relying on a spirit's power, a cultivator would never become truly strong themselves. At that moment, Lin Feng had taught Qiong Bai Luo a good lesson. The crowd agreed with him. They realized that Qiong Bai Luo hadn't ever shown his strength. He always just relied on his spirit, but because his spirit was extremely strong, people had forgotten about his actual strength. They had just always considered Qiong Bai Luo as an extremely strong cultivator, and believed that Lin Feng couldn't compete with him. But the reality was far from that. You said that you wanted to cripple my cultivation and teach me a lesson. Well, then I will cripple your cultivation so that in the future you will know your place, said Lin Feng, which stupefied the crowd. Qiong Bai Luo was acting incredibly egocentric. Cripple Lin Feng so in the future, he would know his place. What would be the point of knowing one's place at that moment anyway? Lin Feng was going to apply the principle of a tooth for a tooth. Qiong Bai Luo had said this previously to Lin Feng, so Lin Feng just repeated it back to him. Lin Feng slightly raised his fist and flames appeared around his fists. They were scorching hot. The temperature increased and it quickly became an immense heat. Die, said Lin Feng. Deadly energy filled the atmosphere. He rushed forwards and his fist bombarded the atmosphere, moving straight towards Qiong Bai Luo. Blue void drizzle. This time, Qiong Bai Luo reacted much faster and rain started to pour down. It looked like a river was falling from the sky. It blocked Lin Feng's path to prevent him from moving closer. You're not the only person who possesses a spirit, smiled Lin Feng. A purple glow started to zigzag through the air towards Qiong Bai Luo, which made his facial expression drastically change. His blue void drizzle was obstructing Lin Feng's path, so he could not use it to block the purple spirit, or he would need to deal with Lin Feng's fist instead. Blue void underworld, furiously shouted Qiong Bai Luo, unable to resist much more. His silhouette flickered and he suddenly rushed towards the Yu clan, which astonished the crowd. His life is yours. Qiong Bai Luo looked at the elder of the Yu clan. Lin Feng slowly turned to look at Qiong Bai Luo. Lin Feng looked terribly amused. Those people who only cared about their prestige and honor were extremely arrogant, but inside, they were just cowardly insects. Arrogant as they were, when they faced danger, they always resorted to unscrupulous or cowardly methods, but the cultivators who had lofty and unyielding characters would continue fighting even if dying was the outcome. Those types of people would fight to protect their honor and integrity. When the elder of the Yu clan heard Qiong Bai Luo, he looked at him and smiled in a deep and profound way. When the elder of the Yu clan heard Cheong Bai Luo, he looked at him and smiled in a deep and profound way. You said that you wanted to cripple his cultivation yourself. I agreed, but now you have lost. Huh. Cheong Bai Luo frowned and looked surprised. He remained silent for a moment and then added, Yes, I did lose, therefore I want to give him to you. Want? You lost, who cares about you want? I don't need you to give me anything. When you finish your fight, I will attack, but not before that, said the elder in cold and indifferent way while shaking his head, which made the crowd sigh. How lamentable! The crowd had thought that Cheong Bai Luo was the best student of the academy and Lin Feng the second best student. But the reality was much different. They were dumbstruck. The person they considered as the best student couldn't even be compared with Lin Feng. Lin Feng had easily defeated Cheong Bai Luo. Then, because Cheong Bai Luo was defeated, he wanted to give Lin Feng to the Yu clan, but the people of the Yu clan refused. The elder's smile could also be perceived as a threat. Cheong Bai Luo looked at the elder's cold eyes and immediately turned around again. He looked at Lin Feng and said, This time I lost, Lin Feng. You are the best student in the Celestial Academy. That honor is now yours. Let's shake hands and make peace, all right? When Lin Feng heard Cheong Bai Luo, he was stupefied. Lin Feng found all of this very amusing. Cheong Bai Luo had thought that he would easily defeat Lin Feng and wanted to cripple his cultivation to prove how strong he was. Since he had lost, he wanted to shake hands and make peace? Was such a thing even possible? Didn't you want to cripple my cultivation? Said Lin Feng with a cold smile, making Cheong Bai Luo narrow his eyes. He turned around again, looked at the elder and said, What do you want me to do? Join my clan, the Yu clan, said the elder, sounding cold and indifferent. All right, but there is one condition, replied Cheong Bai Luo, who had no other choice. A condition? Then forget about it. The Yu clan doesn't lack people wanting to join, replied the elder while smiling coldly, which astonished Cheong Bai Luo. He then said in a weak voice, All right, I will leave everything behind me and become a member of the Yu clan. I'm not talking about being a member. I'm talking about becoming a servant. From today, you will do everything that the Yu clan requests of you, said the elder with an ice-cold smile. A member? Ridiculous. Even though his natural abilities were not bad, with his temperament he was doomed to make enemies. Why would they want him if they couldn't dispose of him? When Cheong Bai Luo heard the word servant, he pulled a long face. The Yu clan wanted him to become their servant. How abominable! The crowd was also astonished. The elder of the Yu clan wanted one their fellow students of the Celestial Academy to become a mere servant, making him no better than a slave. Wasn't that a humiliation for the Celestial Academy? I will give you 10 seconds to think it over, said the elder of the Yu clan coldly, which made Cheong Bai Luo's heart violently twitch. He, Cheong Bai Luo, was going to become a servant? His face turned deathly pale. Cheong Bai Luo looked at Lin Feng again while gnashing his teeth and biting his lip. Blood even streaked from his lip. I agree, replied Cheong Bai Luo. He finally replied. Cheong Bai Luo had actually accepted to become a servant of the Yu clan. Phew! The crowd down on the ground was sighing. Hatred invaded their eyes. Cheong Bai Luo was really audacious. He surprisingly became one of the Yu clan's servants. Who would want that kind of genius? He was scum, a worthless human being. The crowd felt like they had all just lost face. A genius of their academy, the one they even considered as the best student of the entire academy, was going to become the Yu clan's servant. What a joke! When they remembered how arrogant he used to be and how they worshipped him, they felt disgust from the bottom of their hearts. Cheong Bai Luo was far from ever being as great as Lin Feng. Very good, so you are now the Yu clan's servant, said the elder while smiling. He then said indifferently, Come and stand behind me. Cheong Bai Luo lowered his head and moved behind the elder, while glancing at Lin Feng. He looked extremely glum. Everything that was happening was because of Lin Feng. If Lin Feng wasn't there, Cheong Bai Luo would still be the best student of the Celestial Academy and everybody would adore him. How could things end this way? Everything had gone wrong because of Lin Feng. At that moment, Cheong Bai Luo had already forgotten that he was the one who had been provoking Lin Feng all the time. He wanted to defeat Lin Feng and cripple his cultivation to prove his strength to everyone. How pitiful, said Lin Feng coldly while looking at Cheong Bai Luo. Even though Cheong Bai Luo had lost, His talent was unquestionable. Apart from Lin Feng, Qiongbai Luo was also a dazzling star of the Celestial Academy, but now he was reduced to being a servant. That was pitiful. What is pitiful? You Lin Feng wouldn't even get the chance to become a Yu clan servant. You are doomed, Lin Feng. The only possible escape is death and nobody will save you. The elder was staring at Lin Feng with clear killing intent. Lin Feng had to die here. Are you trying to intimidate me? Said Lin Feng, sounding indifferent. He then said slowly, the Celestial Academy. The elder frowned and immediately adopted a normal facial expression again before saying in a cold way, so what? Regardless of how you view the Celestial Academy, you shouldn't cause trouble here. You should know that much better than me. No, I don't know what you mean and nothing will stop me from killing you, said the elder while smiling coldly and indifferently. He then moved forwards and jumped from the white crane. However, at the same time, the sound of a zither spread through the atmosphere. Only one sound spread through the air, but it immediately caused the elder to stop. The elder raised his head and looked at the direction that the zither sound was coming from. He suddenly felt relieved. It's the eternal misty rain I greet, senior, said the elder of the Yu clan. The zither sound from the distance startled everybody except for Lin Feng, who was well aware of who it came from. Yin Yu Ping Shang, the zither sound a moment ago came from him. Get lost. These words echoed through the atmosphere. That voice didn't sound furious at all. It sounded calm, serene, soft and gentle, but the elder's heart twitched. Who would dare to refuse Yin Yu Ping Shang? I will of course obey Senior Yin Yu's order, said the elder of the Yu clan, sounding calm. Immediately after, he turned around, raised his hand and waved. Immediately, all the members of the Yu clan retreated. Qiongbai Luo was astonished. Leave? They would just leave like that? They weren't going to kill Lin Feng? Eternal misty rain, what did that mean? And who was that Senior Yin Yu? Qiongbai Luo coldly glanced at Lin Feng and saw that he was casually moving past the Yu clan, which stupefied him. He was acting so calm. Very quickly, the Yu clan disappeared without trace. Lin Feng looked at the people who were leaving as he was leaving the public square. They all left. The crowd looked at the vast and broad sky while remaining silent. The mighty Yu clan immediately left because of the order that Senior Yin Yu gave? Who was Yin Yu Shangping in reality? It seemed like he was even more majestic and powerful than Long Ding. The members of the Yu clan didn't even care about Long Ding, but they seemed to be scared of Yin Yu. Everybody wanted to understand the situation, but one thing that was clear to them was Lin Feng's position as the best student of the Celestial Academy. Nobody could deny that. Lin Feng arrived at the peach orchard. He wasn't moving through the sky anymore. He was walking on the ground. He slowly entered the pavilion and Yin Yu Shangping was still playing the zither there. It seemed like the thing that he dedicated his life to was the zither. Teacher, what is going on? Asked Lin Feng. Even though the Yu clan was powerful and wanted to kill him, after the words said by Yin Yu Shangping, they immediately left without a word. They are investigating you. They want to know every single detail of your background, replied Yin Yu Shangping, sounding indifferent, which surprised Lin Feng a little bit. They wanted to know everything about him? Was there anything interesting even worth knowing? Don't you think the events that happened in the lovesick forest seemed a bit strange? Asked Yin Yu Shangping while raising his head to look at Lin Feng, which made Lin Feng suddenly realize something. What surprised Lin Feng even more was that Yin Yu Shangping seemed to have the answers. It is very strange indeed, replied Lin Feng while slightly nodding his head. It seemed like Duan Wuya had planned everything. Lin Feng killed Yu Tianxing and Yu Qiu had come to avenge him, but instead he had his cultivation crippled by the people from the lovesick forest. Why had the people of the lovesick forest come to help him? Lin Feng didn't feel like randomly guessing, but Yin Yu Shangping was creating even more questions. Lin Feng, they think that you might have some sort of connection with the lovesick forest. As they are unable to find the real truth, they came to the academy in an attempt to find out, replied Yin Yu Shangping, but Lin Feng shivered. Yin Yu Shangping's voice was soft and calm, giving Lin Feng the impression that he was a wise and far-sighted man. Perhaps Lin Feng had a connection with them. Yin Yu Shangping was actually a very straightforward person. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.